Thursday, January 23rd, and I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order. I have with me in the room the Finance Committee, Dean Nahadas, our newest member, Gar Morse.
Welcome.
Peter Twining, Andy Creighton, and myself, Sarah Mellish. We have Andy Olderman on Zoom. We also have in the room John Round from the Select Board, Chuck Dam, Director of DPW, and Nate DeRosiers from DPW. And this meeting is being recorded. So our first item on the agenda is to review the fiscal year 26 DPW budget. And I understand that Chuck has some slides.
Yeah, so I thought it'd be helpful, based on the last few conversations to just kind of get a read on, what we have been doing, in the past, but also this fiscal year where we are at, as well as, what we're seeing in future years. Within, it's only like 8 to 10 slides, but, at the end is where I kind of had my operating and, any facilities questions, but the first 6 or 7 slides are kind of the bigger overarching questions about different, bigger capital projects that are going on right now and, again, in the future.
And is it okay if we ask questions as you go on?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
whatever. So, we'll, when we can probably talk about it all night, so maybe we'll think about it, but, other than that, sure.
Okay.
So this is how I broke it out, just to kind of talk about the pipeline and roadway, which, you guys are probably seeing every day. PFAS, which
result in a violation of the conflict of interest.
Wastewater treatment plant, which, is
A
a
planning board
topic.
consisting of 5 elected members meets with all members present. A statute sets a deadline for the board to act on a matter before them. Only the planning board may act on this, and 3 members are required for a quorum. 3 board members have financial.
Yeah, I think it's. Anyway, the School Creek site, which is the old compost site, which, we've talked about before for future DPWs, a couple other thoughts about that, which kind of, is part of the overall facility master plan. And then, like I said, at the end, we have operating facilities, which is kind of the general year-to-year stuff. So on pipeline and roadway, the Pleasant Street pipeline work is done. We'll be paving it first thing in the spring. Old Essex Road was an add alternate to that project. That is funded and will be, the pipeline work will start in the spring. We'll probably pave Old Essex Road in the fall. Forest and Mill, which is part of the CST grant, Mass Works grant. Believe it or not, the water main work and the force main work are pretty much all complete. Some minor issues to resolve, that's work ongoing in the winter. We do have a small section on Forest Street that needs to be done in the spring, because it's gonna require bypass. And then the School Street section, there's one piece of School Street from basically the Country Club up to Mill Street that didn't get completed a couple of years ago. So this project is fixing that. And then all the paving associated with that work will happen in the fall as well.
So are you only going to the culvert that goes under 128?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's only with the force main for the sewer. The water main on Mill Street is newer than everything else in town.
Oh.
And it's, adequate size, so there's no need to replace that
Okay.
portion of it.
And was Old Essex funded out of the financing for Pleasant?
Correct, yeah, the water main work.
Yeah.
Yep. So that, fourth bullet there, then just so everybody's aware, part of the, CSC special permit with the planning board, was going to, or they basically paid the town to repay that water when their work's all done. So I just threw that on here as like work that's kind of funded separately from, planning board of the town, or from town budget. This is kind of a CST payment to the town. And that will include the work on Upper School Street from basically the on-off ramps at 128 up to the Essex town line. The first part of that was part of the CST payment to the town. The second part of that going from Atwater to Essex town line. That's something I'm working on a separate grant for. We'll just see how we do, but that's kind of all in the works.
Why are there barriers on that bridge across 128?
So somebody hit it from 128 with a piece of equipment, on a trailer.
I see.
And so that's their solution to make sure that they don't overburden the remaining structure. So that, they don't want, say there was a accident or something, they don't want a whole bunch of cars queued up on top of the bridge. And that's something worse. So that's why they basically did that barrier.
You can sit in one of those chairs if you want, Kathy.
I'm back and forth between bike and petting here, so.
Sure.
Double
Yeah.
point today.
The section between the water and the Essex Town line, that's the culvert, the Sawmill Brook culvert under. That was done recently. I mean, is there issues with that portion of the road? Or-
So the road is getting a little bit, maybe not exactly at the culvert, but the rest of it, the balance of it is, I think, fairly well seasoned.
Is it plugged into the pavement maintenance program? Like, how does it
Yeah.
rank with
Right,
Penn
so
Street, Tappan Street?
we can get there in a second, but the real answer to the question is where a requirement that CST had was to add bike lanes to the first section. And so this will allow us to add bike lanes to the second section.
Right.
Which is it's not currently wide enough, so it will include some widening of the road to allow for bike lanes, separated bike lanes.
I see.
And so it's only a, mill and overlay, we're not talking full reconstruction, but that's why we'll do the whole thing. So the Tappan and Bennett, Tappan didn't end up, on this year's capital plan, but those are the next two projects, that need to get done. And then those are full pipeline, water, sewer, drain, and then the roadway and sidewalks after the fact. So those are, pretty substantial undertakings, but those are the next ones. So this is the pipeline map that I always show you guys, but the blue is the stuff that's been done since I've been here. The kind of lighter width lines are kind of the existing, and the red is all the stuff that is highlighted on the yellow here. But the red pipeline in the map, that's all the pre-1900 pipe. You can see there's still a significant amount, even though it might seem like we're always doing water main work. There's a lot left to do. And we've been getting a lot more questions recently. You mentioned, the one about the sidewalks, but with all the wildfires, even in Massachusetts, people are starting to ask a lot more questions about forestry management, but also, how are our hydrants doing, how are our pipelines doing? And so, every section of this red pipe, pre-1800, pre-1900 pipe that gets replaced is, direct benefit to, our ability to, capacity fight fires and everything else.
And what's the lifespan of the work you're doing now?
So, definitely 50-year life cycle, no doubt. Maybe 50 years from now, we're testing from some substance that I don't know about that, is in the cement or something else, but, by today's standards, 50 years, no problem. And, potentially more. So, this was something I developed last year, but I kind of updated it. So you can see from FY18, which is when I started, to FY25, including the CST grant work, but that's work that's getting pipe out of the system. We spent over $11.5 million on pipeline work. I kind of updated the average on there, the approximate weighted average, $400 a foot, applied that, to everything that's left. So, this spreadsheet actually goes on beyond what you can see on the screen, but just to kind of show, if we go out to FY49, we spend a few $1 million a year, we're still not done. It's still going to be pipe work to be done. And so the value of that work was roughly, $46 million. So, if you spread it out over, 20 years, you're talking $2 million a year, no problem.
And that would take care of how much of the red, or not, what was the color?
Almost all. Yeah. So, you look at all these, streets, it's, for all intents and purposes, almost every street in town that we haven't done already. And, those are kind of all on this sheet going down, and, I've prioritized them on, a few different metrics, but, they're all there. And, we'll go down.
Joe, 2 questions. Are you still having difficulty getting pipe, or has that become easier at this
No,
point?
that's becoming easier. We didn't actually hear any about that on forestry. So forestry is, going from a 6-inch, 1900 pipe to a 12-inch new ductile iron. I didn't actually hear anything about that, so, yeah.
The second question is, I know you've kind of established a sweet spot over the years of how much construction the town can sort of tolerate before people get a little apoplectic. Are we there, Are you holding there, you feel you could do a little more, what's the?
Well, so for instance, Pleasant and Forest Mill this past year.
Right.
It's almost, over $6 million worth of work. That's a double, I know. I don't think anybody wanted it. And, that was a big, big pipe that needed to be done, but also, Pleasant Street is a major kind of, cross town,
Yes.
Forest Street as well. So I think I hear it both ways. I hear it from residents that, I can't get out of my driveway, and, everything's a disaster, but then I hear it from other people, it's like, well, people aren't using Forest Street as a cut through anymore, so I love it.
Yeah.
So, what are you gonna
So-
do?
So just a variation on that question. So it looks like your plan.
Just state your name.
I'm sorry,
please.
Kathy Bellata, 21 Pine Street. It looks like your plan goes out to, is it fiscal year 49-ish?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you a question. My boss used to ask me all the time.
Sure.
What would it take if you could wave a magic wand and funding was not a barrier? How fast could you get rid of the red and how much would you need? And you don't have to answer right now, but we need to ask the question that way. Because one option is to treat it like you're building a building, right? Invest, accelerate, and get it done. And we don't have the data to be able to have that type of discussion right now. Because we've been trying to live within financial boundaries and just looking at it a little differently. Not saying I have a magic wand, but I think we need to ask the question.
So I would say in the next, 2 to 4 years, the priority has to be getting Tappan and Bennett done. And so, those are two that are kind of on separate sides of town that aren't major arteries. And, so if I can maybe manage one, I'd say we could certainly do those all at once. We could have either one bid with one contractor doing both of them, or we could do 2 separate bids. Like we could do that work. And I don't think the town would shut down. But that, that we're talking $8 to $10 million to do all that at once. So that's the priority. That's what needs to be done. The reason I say that is because the water main needs to get done, but also the sewer is really
Right.
driving those projects.
But if those get done faster, then it allows you to do everything else faster. right?
Absolutely. And so that's what I would say. And then that allows us to get the roadway and sidewalks done for those 2 streets, that much quicker. It can let us get other things that much quicker. Then after that, the answer changes a little bit because Summer and Bridge are, well, certainly Summer. And so Summer, I'm anticipating that we're probably not going to do all of Summer Street all at once. Because it's a very long street and it's going to be cost prohibitive. But if you were to tell me, hey, wait, magic wand, get it done. I'd have to look at what the number would be. But it's a linear job. So, even if we had 2 crews going on that job, again, it wouldn't shut down town. It wouldn't be, people would understand.
The reason I'm asking the question, so we have a lot of facility, big capital investment discussions we've got to have and make decisions about. I personally would like to see us present the pipe project as something that we can mingle in that conversation as an option. We may choose not to do it, but we don't have the data to have the discussion.
So I think this year's budget and, the kind of 5-year capital plan is kind of looking at it the opposite way, which is we have these big facility needs. And so, Tappan Street, which may have been able to get done this coming FY26, is not in FY26 because of these bigger capital needs.
So you're saying the DPW site is a bigger priority than the Tappan Street pipe?
Let's not go there.
No, but what I'm asking
It's
is the
not,
financial.
he doesn't make the priorities. I think the issue is, I agree with you. We need to know what the cost of things is instead of just throwing a few million at things
Yes.
a year. That we need a plan and then we need to determine how to follow that plan and over what time.
Agree. So just my specific request is the next time we get together, talk about facilities and priorities. I'd like to understand what chunks of work could be done at an accelerated rate if we invested capital in that, and then the select board can discuss with you what the priorities are.
So I mean, I think the numbers are here, and you know, whichever way you want me to give it to me. If you give them to you.
Yeah, I'm just not sure they're chunked up in a way that we can absorb.
Yeah, if you can send,
Yeah.
if you can send this, deck to me, then I'll get that distributed to all the finance committee. Yeah,
And,
Just one question along those lines. Do you have a feel of what the public tolerance for a construction zone is for how many linear feet of pipe before people say this is too much?
right, so
You can't-
work zone moves with the work, and so, you know, I think. You know, it is what it is.
Depends on the
They
road.
need to access the pipe, they need to access the, you know, materials wherever they're staged, you know, so that's gonna vary from street to street.
did you get complaints about Pleasant Street?
A couple times, you know, there was the detours, and this is an ongoing problem, it's not, you know, just Pleasant Street, we had it in other places. We cannot update, you know, website or you know, social media or anything fast enough to keep up with the contract. They're moving from side to side, and, you know, at some points they're working on main line, at some points they're working on bypass, some points they're working on side streets, and so, you know, even from day to day, but like hour to hour within that timeframe, they're moving around. So as soon as we put information out to say, hey, don't go, you know, westbound on Pleasant Street today, you know, because it's gonna be detoured, it might be wrong, and then people get upset the other way. Hey, we went by and it looked like there was no work going on, but you said it was shut down. Sorry, like, you know, we don't have the ability to update in real time. So my answer to that is like, you know, work's going on Pleasant Street, if at all possible, try and avoid it. And if you can't, you know, just be prepared that there will be a detail officer telling you to go around, or, you know, that you're gonna have to wait a minute for the, you know, construction to clear, or, you know, the front end loader to get by, or you know, whatever the case may be. Because it's a work zone, so it's not. So that's just reality of construction.
So I think if you provide that information, though, when we just have the clarity discussion, and maybe look at the pipes differently, I wouldn't let that communication issue be a barrier, because there are ways, emergency preparedness and other, you know, technology that we have that we could use to send text messages. So I wouldn't worry about the communication aspect
Oh, that
necessarily
was not.
being, and hindering the discussion we need to have.
Right. Yeah, the construction has to get done. You know, it's a temporary nuisance, but they do the best they can.
Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're getting to the point where we shouldn't be looking at age alone. A lot of this pipe is performing fine and will continue to. It's a matter of finding which pipe is settling, which pipe is cracking, which pipe is undersized. So to do it all at once, it doesn't, I know it's just an exercise, but
No, I didn't suggest doing it all at once.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting chunking it up in groups that can be done at an accelerated rate.
okay,
Because to do it, you know, all the way out through, you know, fiscal year 49, stuff is gonna break. In the meantime, we're just delaying the inevitable. So there is a way from a project management standpoint to chunk it up differently. And I don't want there to be artificial barriers. The select board needs to have a discussion about those priorities.
And I'm not basing it on age alone. If I was basing it on age alone,
I know.
you know, we have. you know,
well, the other thing
several
that you
hundred
said that,
miles.
the other thing you said that kind of stuck out is the sewer pipe. We're not replacing that, that's 100 years old too.
No, it's not. So on.
Well,
On Tappan and Bennett it might be, and it definitely needs to be replaced. On Pleasant Street,
are we
it's
doing
certainly
a
not.
sewer as well, if it needs
So
it?
it's a different thing. So, you know, when we were under consent order over the last decade for II, leaky pipes on the sewer side.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have to replace those. We can line them,
Yes,
we can rehab them. On Tappan and Bennett specifically, we could not. And so we thought we were going to line those and we couldn't.
okay,
And so now they have to be replaced. That's why those are my priority.
including the sewer.
But
Including the sewer and the issue.
line, some of the sewer
Just
on
spot,
Bennett,
just spot line. Yeah, it's not. It's
they
not,
build all my quests
yeah,
along the street.
it's not adequate.
Okay,
We're still having issues. And so, you know, Tappan's, that's why Tappan's first, is because that one really has issues.
Yeah.
Bennett, secondary, but yes, has issues.
I know it.
Um,
Down the bottom.
and so, you know, they did the best they could with those jobs, and they, you know, some of the lining that they put in might have been just manhole specific, not the liner for the line. So, you know, we have all these maps and all these, you know, reports that kind of document all this stuff, but that's the general gist of it. And then I would say the priority is not age, because everything is the same age. It's part of the master. The priority is, maintaining public safety in terms of the, capacity of the pipes and the, pipelines. Like, for example, Colburn Road is just as old as Summer Street, but Summer Street is the priority because it's the critical line to all of East Manchester. So that's, that's first. And then I would say, there's areas around Vine and Norwood where, that's coming directly off the well. Once we spend $10-12 million rehabbing the well, and having the iron manganese not go into the distribution system, it would be nice to get rid of the iron manganese that's already in the distribution system. So, there's a lot more to it.
Right.
Spend more time, but that's always in mind.
Now, I read that the hydrants by the fire yesterday froze. Why do hydrants freeze? Is it because they're old or is it because of the weather?
So, yeah, there's a couple different things could freeze. And so in this particular instance, they're at the bottom. So when we flush in the fall, when we close that hydrant after we flush, the barrel is still full. So except on bottom, there's a drain port that the hydrant itself is this now, isolated from the distribution system, which is always maintaining pressure. And so those seats, because we have so much iron and manganese in the water, and legacy now at this point, like it's all just been there for 100 years. That will inhibit the valve from coming down flush in the pipe, and so you might get a little trickle that just passes that, and it's usually just going out the drain. But then when we have these real cold stretches, that water might freeze. And so it's then they're not draining anymore and the water goes up until it freezes all the way up. And so then when they go and spin that, the valve that you would normally operate up and down is frozen. And so what I heard last night was they went to do that and they literally bent the hydrants. They couldn't actually open. And so, that is really case by case. I'll even give our guys credit. They actually have been out checking for frozen hydrants because they know these 1971 Kennedys always freeze or, could potentially freeze. So they were out there today and obviously thawing that one out, but they went down to the next one. And I was talking to the chief today and it was actually probably a blessing in disguise that one was frozen because they went to the next one back, which was on Lincoln Street, which if you look on this blue map, that little blue section next to the well is Lincoln Street. So they're actually pulling off a much better main that has better capacity. And they were already pumping from the hydrant through their lines up the driveway. And so it was actually a better end to put out the fire to maintain the water on the fire that they were looking for. But they did go to that hydrant that they couldn't operate. And so that is exactly what we would do when we go to clean line Summer Street. And this is what we did on Pleasant Street is we replaced the hydrants as well as lining the pipe and the valves that even the line valves on the line, not necessarily the hydrant themselves. So that's stuff that gets rehabbed now quicker than 110 years that the pipe's been.
Some kind of conditioning you can do to the valves when you flush the mains, not really.
No, I mean, it's, the best we can do is to flush them because that gets some of that, breaks some of that stuff off and helps move it, but it's not a
It's been cool, but
perfect system. So just other things I've heard, there was talk about, what's the next street or what's the run rate on the, paving plan and stuff like that. So this is actually, we have, again, we have this information, a roadway management plan, pavement management plan, PMP. And, so this was done 7-8 years ago, it was actually before me, but, I'm working on it. The information only gets, when we replace a street, it goes to 100, it's not rocket science. So anyway, you can see the stuff that's crossed out, you probably can't see the names, but in general, we've done the one that I have kind of blocks here in red. Those are the ones that were major rehabilitation. So we've, picked off quite a few of those. And you can see the ones that have circled in green are the ones that are still ready, which are Tappan and Bennett. And then the other ones that, I haven't touched are, Colburn Road, which, is a big, long stretch of road, but there's only 3 or 4 houses up there. It's not a through street. Same with Crafts Court, Victoria Road, so, if I had unlimited funds, I would pave those roads, but, I got to prioritize where we do the pipe. So that's, just another thing that we look at. You can see kind of further down, there's other streets that have been done now, School Street, Mill Street. And so I did the math on, if we were just to take all the pipeline work out of it, and, just kind of, what is your run rate? We're looking at 20-year life cycle typically on a new road. And if we're just gonna do a mill and overlay on the road, we're looking at $30 a square yard. We have about 342,000 square yards of road. So that's a $10 million price tag if we did it all at once. And if you break it over 20 years, because theoretically we're renewing every 20 years, you're a little over 500 grand. So if I were just to peg a number to always have in the budget, it'd be about 513,000.
This relates to a conversation that he and I had, that's why it's.
Yeah, which you guys have brought up in previous.
What's the run rate? That's why he's mentioning.
And so, of course, that's not a perfect number from year to year, but if we're spending less than that, it's a detriment to the overall 20-year cycle. And there's always mixing and matching and more shredding that has to go on. There's sewer work that may or may not need to get done, drain work that may or may not need to get done, or streetlights, like. So that's what we're looking at.
Chuck, have you filtered into this, Central Street Dam and the implications that's a 14-month project? Pine Street, Pleasant School,
That's why
that's gonna do some wear and tear.
that's later in the presentation, I'll do have Central Street on there. But yeah, I do think about that. The update on the PFAS situation, so if anybody has more question about pipeline or sewer utility. The update on PFAS, as you know, we've been looking at this longer than most cities and towns. But so we have a concept for the Lincoln Street well that was done in 22. The EPA compliance deadline that was promulgated last year is 2029. So that basically puts both the well and Gravely Pond out of compliance when that date hits, if we do nothing. This is kind of history, but we did look at, could we pipe the water up from Lincoln Street up to Gravely Pond? That's why Pleasant Street kind of got held back a year. So then, now we've completed the work on Pleasant Street because that turned out to be not an ideal option from a cost perspective or a treatment perspective. So, this year we've been doing piloting for Lincoln Street well, that's done. We had to pilot both iron and manganese removal because there is no removal there right now. So that, that's pretty tried and true. There's lots of systems in Massachusetts that have to treat for iron and manganese. So basically what we'll be looking at is a set of filters for iron and manganese removal. And then the thing that's kind of ongoing is we sent that filtered water from the pilot, taken out the iron and manganese, to a lab where now they're running the PFAS removal tests on that. We expect that report next month. We will be out to RFQ on that design probably next month. That's where we're going to spend the grant that we got from the federal earmark, roughly $1 million. The grant was $960,000. The project itself will be $1.2 million. So that we anticipate that will get us through all of that design for Lincoln Street. So that's on its path. Gravely Pond a little bit different. So that's a surface water source. So it's not the same exact stuff. We have existing filters there. What we have piloted was first DP made us pilot if we were to change the media in those filters that are there now to the GAC, which removes the PFAS. What kind of treatment would we get of the surface water? So it's kind of a two-pronged question. Surface water needs to be treated for all the stuff that's in surface water besides PFAS. What kind of treatment do we get? So we answered that question, and the answer was it actually treats better than the existing filters. So that's great. Sorry. And next, we have to say, based on our water and that constituents, how much runtime do we get through the GAC removing the PFAS before the PFAS breaks through? That question we found out last month, because this has been an ongoing test. We got about 17 weeks of runtime before we saw the PFAS breakthrough. We were hoping to get like 28. So not the best answer, but not bad. So now the question will be, we're still doing the bench scale testing to find out, if there's another media besides GAC that would work better or worse, but that is kind of the worst case scenario where we have to build basically a separate treatment plan versus using our existing treatment plan and just being smart about the media.
This is a question of the media. What media works best, and they are differently priced, or the medias, I guess each media has.
Well, if we have to build a whole new building,
Yeah, okay,
That's where we get the other meters.
I'm going
Right
by,
now, we can put GAC in our existing
Yep.
filters, and we can treat for PFAS even, just not as long as we want. So it becomes a life cycle cost question of
yes,
how many times we have to or remove the GAC and put in fresh new GAC. The answer right now, this is very much over certification, but almost every 17 weeks, which we're hoping to get. So it's like
what times?
months. So like if you look over a life cycle of 20-year capital investment, that's a lot of GAC. And it's a lot of disposal, which that's the other big, wild card is how much is it gonna cost us to dispose of this stuff? Because it's gonna be a whole bunch of PFAS. So these are questions that still need to be answered. That's what we'll get over the next month or so when we get these reports back.
Are there disposal sites set up that are
And
qualified?
it's considered hazardous waste?
They haven't really made a difference. Like this is all so new.
Right, yeah.
We're not sure yet. But so that's just to say, this is still out there. This is still a question that is being answered, but it's still I think when we're talking about the other category, I'm not thinking about DPW more, I'm thinking more about this, this could be a big one. I will say I was also at Mass Waterworks conference yesterday, the commissioner of DEP was there. Based on the new administration, they're not expecting a lot of money to come to Massachusetts for SRF projects, meaning that, we may get some relief either through debt forgiveness or, zero interest loans through SRF. But, I'm not anticipating that we're getting 50%, cash free or anything like that. So, we'll keep trying and, we'll see what happens when the time comes, but, I think we can all read the room when it comes to the federal government giving the state of Massachusetts.
Sarah, I have one.
Yes, Scott.
I apologize. I'm new. I'm gonna ask a very general question. Exhibit my stupidity about all this. When you submit these plans, do you separate operating costs from capital costs? And when you do like paving, is that in the capital section or is that in the operating section?
Yes, so all of these big projects are definitely in capital. They are in the 5-year plan that I think is part of that, but if it's not, it's part of the different.
Okay.
Look, the operating is really mostly salaries for the staff, as well as the day-to-day items like electricity, gas for the trucks, chemicals,
Okay.
tree maintenance, stuff like that.
Chuck, one question, if we were talking about Lincoln Street a moment ago, and my recollection from a year or two ago was you were thinking the treatment might be 1.2. I think you referenced that again. But that's design only. Okay, what do you think the nickel's gonna be on?
About 40. I think the number we had was 11, but
Yeah.
it's a no.
Oh,
So I'm the
both
water
sides?
commissioner of Wenham. We have almost a
East
identical
Lincoln,
thing at Lincoln.
Yep.
Lincoln is what we have in Wenham. And we just did a more recent study than what we did, but
Yeah.
same idea. It's 12.
Okay.
Completely apples to apples, but
Do you think the same kind of hit up at Beverly Pond as well?
we have to build a
If
new
you have to build
plant, it'll be more. It'll be like 60,
But if it'll be
60, okay.
But if we get away with just GAC or we take a bigger hit on the operating.
Yep.
We'll look at the life cycle costs and see which one's better, in today's dollars, but.
Yep.
But yeah, that's gonna be a question.
Okay.
Is the reverse osmosis or the other ion stuff too far out or not practical? Or if this waste stuff gets too prohibitive?
I mean, so the anion exchange, you're still gonna have the media issues and so there's not really a huge savings.
There's less of it, right?
Yeah, and it's more energy intensive on the RO side,
Yeah.
so all that gets factored in. And it doesn't save you, maybe slightly smaller, but you're still building a new building and.
Is it worth donating a couple of pages in the study to come up with some?
I'll be part of it. Yeah, I mean, we already have done some of that homework.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that's part of if you go to the PFAS website, all the stuff is there.
just another question, I assume another variable that will be looked at in this report is what is the throughput cost per 100 gallons or whatever? And if you shift the amount of water you're using from one place to another over a year's period, does it save you money because the cost per unit volume that it's processed would be high?
So
There are a lot of factors.
unfortunately, there's a lot of other factors that go into that.
I
One of which
understand.
is we don't have an unlimited supply at the well. We can only pump that up to 300 gallons a minute or something like 350. And you know, whereas the plant is much more, you know,
Sure.
400 gallons a minute. So the math doesn't work certain time of year. But yeah,
Sorry, I'm gonna ask one more question, I'm trying to shut up.
that's why we're here.
Capital, it's on the last page of the thing. It says road resurfacing, requested 300,000, recommended 300, taxation 300,000. I'm looking for a number which is all the road resurfacing that needs to be done over a long period of time.
Right.
Like-
That's the number I just gave you, I think.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
If I were just to do it all tomorrow, I'd say give me $10 million.
Okay,
$10,000,000, 500,000.
that would, and the same thing for all of the other capital items here. So that.
Well, so that's just looking at FY 26. So, you know, it may or may not be, if there's also a 5-year plan that sounds like it's not on that page,
Okay.
that
Yeah,
talks about, you know, PFAS, DPW.
Wastewater treatment, you know, that.
we have a fiscal year 26 through, yeah, we have a spreadsheet.
Thank you.
We got it last fall.
40 years.
So I think that's very good on PFAS. Wastewater treatment plant, we got our RFQs, so that was funded at last town meeting for the $34 million period, turned to $4 million. So we're looking at, you know, the plant water system, which was a big deal, but also doing a lot of mechanical work with clarifiers, tankage. We have pumps and valves that need to be replaced. Pumps are all oversized and original. We also have HVAC generator, and you know, we're going to do some floodproofing for certain things that you know are vulnerable. So you know, the $4 million is not going to cover all of that list, but it'll, you know, we'll get there.
Are they oversized because they're for the capacity of the system or?
Right.
I mean, are we replacing them with less size?
Right, we'll probably do, it's gonna be a whole effort, but the moral of the story is when they built and designed that plant, they had a certain like $1.2 million, 1.2 million gallon design flow.
Yeah.
Our permit's only for 670,000 gallons a day.
Uh-huh.
And I think back then, you know, the engineering was, you know, you have to anticipate all of this II coming in and you have to be able to treat for that so you don't have SSOs or CSOs.
Yeah.
And so basically, instead of allowing that to happen, what DEP and, you know, our permit makes us do is remove the II. So we never see, and we never, you know, have peak demand that matches what those are sized for,
Right.
for average. And so, you know, on a, you know, right now, there's barely any flow in the system. It's our, you know, low time of year because, you know, population's down, there's not as much, you know, demand as in the summer on the water side, but then there's also not high groundwater right now. There's not a lot of rain that's getting, or everything's frozen. You know, so we're probably only seeing a couple, 200,000-300,000 gallons a day. You know, everything's sized for 1.2 million. So everything's just the wrong size. And so it takes the equipment takes a beating. Takes a beating anyway, because it's just wastewater, which is tough to do.
Is it less efficient if it's oversized?
Everything is
Cost more, huh?
yeah, everything costs more, breaks down more, maintenance is more. So what we'll do, in response to that, is probably have a couple small pumps, because everything has to have redundancy too, so there's probably 3 sets of pumps for every one function. You know, there's, well, I guess, only 2 effluent pumps, but there's 3 intermediate pumps, there's, you know, 3 RAS pumps, so, you know, there's a lot of redundancy built in, but what we'll do is we'll size, you know, 1 pump for the actual flow, and then we'll have swing pumps on VFD, so, you know, if we really get, you know, peak II condition, it's double the thing, we just turn on another pump. And then, you know, both pumps are running efficient in that case, but 80% of the time, it's only 1 pump. It's the right size, that's not, you know, running out on a scarf and costing. So yeah, So, it's probably gonna be a 12-month design period, and then we'll get to construction. So this is one of those ones that, you really have to do the math, do the engineering, and then plan it so that things are coming offline, because, there's no second treatment plan. Everything has to stay running while we construct the improvements. That's why, it's very delicate.
So does that mean that the bond payments that we approved are likely to not hit the tax rate until fiscal year 27?
Yes. But also, that one specifically, because the wastewater is not 100% taxation. I think 25, I'm not sure, I forget which way it goes, but 25% of that or 75% of that is scheduled in rates. Not.
Oh, that's right.
in the
Yeah.
rates.
Right, yeah.
And then, just to keep it on everybody's mind, 20 years from now, we're looking at either a really big wall or moving the plant. So those are the big ticket items that Greg has on his, extended capital plan, it's not on the 5-year plan, but. Okay,
Where would that money be moved? We don't know.
with that. Yeah, we don't know.
I'm in favor of the wall.
The wall.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
wall
I mean,
is-
you're looking at 20 years out for the wall.
The whole
Yeah, so we might also be able to do that one in stages, like in 10 years, build a 5-foot wall. And then
Oh,
10 years after that, do
yeah, no,
wall,
that's-
another
Yeah.
5 feet.
That's understood, okay. Yeah,
But you could do a wall and protect the town hall also.
It looked like
And the
ancient
parking
cities.
lot.
Like a
What
moat.
a great big jam on the railroad bridge.
So,
That's something along the city plan, yeah.
I just think 20's
I chatted about
20's
that
a
for
little
years.
far out.
We always talk about the plant and the pipes going out to people's towns. Are we okay on the pipe that goes from the plant out to Misery?
And we actually did an inspection late this fall.
Great.
Yeah, everything looked great. There's some very healthy, sea life.
Great fishing out there.
That outfall was replaced, I think.
Yeah, so the elbow has been replaced and extended further. out.
Yeah, yeah.
It was 25%.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
remote.
99.
That's something that could be a big ticket if it was. not that one, but
No,
it's-
I think we're have to inspect every 3 years, and so we did this year, and that looked good. Finding it on the, diving off the boat is not that's the hard part. Central Creek Culvert brought this one up, so we are anxiously, mercifully trying to get the final permitting. We think we'll have it on chapter 91's desk in a week or so, hopefully. We've already reached out to the chapter 91 people telling us coming that, they need to give us as quick a turnaround as they can. From there, we have permitting that has, they need the chapter 91 sign off to approve the other permits, the Army Corps, the water quality,
Water quality.
so everybody's got a permit for this culvert. So that will be ongoing. We're trying to get to bidding in spring, at this point, it's already the end of January. Looking at, best case scenario, late spring, March, April, opening day. And then, theoretically, if we can, work with the regulators on our timeline restrictions in terms of in the water work restrictions, potentially we would still try and get to construction in fall. And that's why I look at Pleasant Street needs to be paved this spring, because that's the main, detour. So that's what's pushing that, but then everything else will come after that. And then, we're still gonna pave it in the spring if the construction of the culvert happens next, fall of 26. Then so be it. That doesn't really impact anything else.
And are any of our grants at risk if we delay too long?
Yes.
Are you using folk engineering on this or
Answer my
something?
question first.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Well, I want.
The grants,
Attention.
yeah, the grants are at risk. Like right now, the completion date written into the grants is, I think, June of 26.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we're doing construction in fall of 26, then that's not good. However, we're hoping that, regardless of if we're constructing it in fall or not, if we have a contractor on board, we have an agreement with the contractor, blah, 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 it's much easier to extend the grant. And therefore hopefully not be in jeopardy than if we are still waiting on permits, you know, in June of 26. They're gonna say, you had your chance, you didn't do anything, sorry. So yes, they are in jeopardy, but we're hoping our plan and our communication gets us to where we need to be.
Now you ask your question.
No, I was just wondering if both engineering was working on that, or you're comfortable with the progress of permitting?
No, so both is not on the culvert project, that's time bond. Both did the rotunda, the other harbor projects that are ongoing. And you know, we're happy with both. It's. I would say up until 6 months ago, I would say it was all on the regulator side. Now I'd say it's, you know, more of a town issue, but.
Question, what's the estimated elapsed time that that road's gonna be closed when that engineering is finalized?
Right, so, you know, there'll be some, you know, one lane, you know, alternating traffic closures at a time. When we actually go to take out the road.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's 25 or 26, it'll be, you know, after Labor Day. You say the contractor gets the road, they have to have the road back open. Or really, they have to have all their in-water work done by February of that, so they have from, you know, September to February. Then they have to be out of the water. And then if that means the culvert is now built, and now they just need to get the roadway back open. So that's from February to, say, May. So the road will be back open by May. So that's kind of like the timeline we're allowing.
September, to answer John's question,
Yeah,
you're
when it's
suggesting the road would be completely inaccessible from September to May?
Potentially.
Okay.
And then, but that's, you know, so that's what we're allowing. So that the contractor can price it accordingly, and then we can allow them, they can always do better. And it's likely that if all their work is done in February, and they have a window to, you know, get the roadway back built, because then the culvert's there. They're just backfilling and, you know, doing this and that, and then they're, you know, once they get to a certain level, then it's, okay, I can open up this side of the road and it's now open.
Yeah, once you get one lane open, that's,
Right.
that's tolerant.
And so we'll push, but you know, it's also, we don't wanna push for the sake of pushing, because, you know, we want the pavement to be placed when it's appropriate to place pavement, not because of an arbitrary deadline we set today.
Yeah.
You know, and so we manage contractors, but that's how we do it. So, you know, we'll try and encourage the quickest timeline possible, obviously, but we have to allow something to base on.
Okay, but that's September to May, like in 9 months?
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a general contractor that oversees this or?
So
So much?
the general contractor will be the responsible party bidder. And they will be doing, you know, for this type of work, they will be performing 90%.
And there are probably 4 or 5 that you would be sending RFPs to.
Right, so it'll be a low bid situation, but you know, we'll pre-qualify contractors. You know, they'll be, you know, this is a, you know, $7 million project, it'll be high-end contractors.
So we'll use DOT pre-qual list. So essentially any contractor that's qualified to work on a DOT project in the price range of this project. So, you know, that does, you know, narrow down and kind of weeds out a lot of the, you know, scrubs.
We'll be offering, you know, financial incentives for them to get it done earlier, et cetera.
You know, it's on the culvert. So School Street site development, so, you know, this year's budget, we had 250,000 for some site development on the, you know, old compost corner of Atwater and School.
Yep.
So the boring and survey work is complete. We expect the boring report next week. They did hit some rock and some boulders, which we expected. It's just a matter of where they hit it and what that does to, you know, foundation designs. We might, you know, schedule some more geotech if there's, you know, lingering questions. You know, we have it in the budget. We did, I think we talked about this before, but just in case we haven't, we have talked to, you know, at least to the select board about additional site layout for making it more of a public safety campus. So if we can possibly not just make it a DPW site, but also police and fire, you know, what would the trade-offs be? What would the, you know, there'd be some savings in terms of administrative space maybe, or, you know, other things, you know, kind of synergies between the site, you know, between the departments. So they, you know, the short answer on that one is, you know, they're gonna give us some alternatives in the next couple of weeks. They have vetted it, they have, you know, they're putting pen to paper, to give us some alternatives to chew on. They'll also include some architectural, components to that, you know, whether we're looking at more industrial stuff or more, you know, whatever the different architectural stuff on architect. So that's part of that. You know, I think my answer is we can certainly do it. I actually mentioned this to planning board folks today, but you know, the restrictions on the LCD in terms of setbacks and, you know, how things are allowed to be developed are certainly not, you know, what this campus would be. So we would need some relief on that, which, you know, is certainly fair, doable, I think. But, you know, so it would take that. We may be, you know, we haven't done the flagging yet on the resource area. You know, there's wetlands across the street, so we're likely in buffers. You know, there's a swale there, so you know, whether or not those, you know, we're in the no build versus just a buffer, you know, it's gonna make a difference. But, you know, in general, and then there's also compensatory areas on site where we could maybe do some horse trading. So it's definitely doable. You know, but it would significantly alter how it looks driving down School Street. It would significantly, you know, alter the budget going forward. Probably, you know, there'll be positives and negatives, and, you know, I think people in your situation need to, you know, really confirm understanding of that and, you know, hopefully support it one way or another so that we can move forward. But, and then below, those things I just talked about is just kind of, these were the long-term capital numbers that had been in the facility master plan. I didn't know if we wanted to, you know, hit on any of those, but, you know, I didn't change anything. It's just kind of how we've been looking at the other facility capital needs, you know, as we've been developing this site.
I'm surprised at the council on aging number. It was my understanding that all renovations were going to be paid through fundraising with no town money.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of details on
Okay.
the full mechanics of it. We have received the RFQs for the designer services actually today.
Okay.
So we got 2 responses, so we'll be, you know, going through those and going through with an award to a designer. But, you know, I think those are some of the details we need to really flush out of, you know, what does this project look like?
Sarah's correct, though, those numbers look.
I mean, the town approved it.
They could definitely be, updated.
The town approved the purchase on the basis there'd be no more town money
Okay.
invested. So even for design services, I don't know where you're gonna get that money from.
Yeah, I was under the impression that we had $50,000 in hand now to do the award, and then we were getting an additional 150 to continue the design. And that was
I mean, I'll have to talk to Greg.
Yeah, 50,000 did come from somewhere. I know Greg mentioned that.
Yeah.
I
So,
mean, I'm sure you guys are right, like, my numbers are old and they were just, I kind of held them there just to make sure, but confirm.
back on the School Street site, so who's the engineering firm doing the feasibility on that?
So right now it's Tetra Tech.
Tetra Tech?
We will, just like all the other projects we talked about, we will have to go to RFQ when we get to the
Yeah.
actual design.
But they're doing the assessment right now.
So there is, probably later in the deck, but, you know, there is several $100,000 in the FY26 budget to further, hopefully at that point, go to actual engineering design, but whatever that fund money is going to, that's in the FY26 budget.
That was a question. What percentage complete are we looking for? 75 of that would be, or 660?
Well, I mean, I think we have to wait, to be fair, we have to wait until we decide is it a public safety campus or not? Because that's, you know, several.
No, we're at the DPW campus at this point, right?
Right, so if that is, then I would say it's, you know, I wouldn't say it's 7%, you know, hoping 50%. 50% seems about right.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. It'll be a very good permitting set.
Right, well,
I mean, you know, again, these are just placeholder numbers, but, you know, based on the work that we've done today, which includes the full facility master plan, as well as a site analysis between School Street and Pleasant Street for a DPW facility, based on, a whole bunch of different parameters. It was like $20 million conceptual design estimate. If you'd say that $20 million project, 10% goes to design, that's $2 million. We spent $250 this year, I think, just for the sake of discussion. $650 is in next year's budget, so that's all in, $900K. $900K is roughly half.
We're talking 20 million for the facility.
That was what was in the report, and,
Yeah.
I'll tell you guys, the report's now a couple of years old, so all of these numbers that we've been holding for a couple of years,
Are low,
a couple of years old.
but we have
So, we'll,
the scope, what we're getting.
again, we still need to do the design development to answer some of the harder questions, which will, certainly include price. So, that's still to be done.
We wouldn't expect it to be more than like the Essex Public Safety Building.
I don't think we
Not
need
sure
to
what
discuss
that-
it now.
And I know Lockport just finished their new DPW and, their budget was 12 million and they blew that.
Yeah.
So, that was, 5 years ago.
Oh, that'll be a good case.
We need that.
Just back one slide, Rotunda, 2 to 4 million. And I know that's heavily grant, is that also at risk? And where is that in the process of the market?
So current cost estimates are around 2.7, with some contingencies in there. I believe we are pursuing the grant opportunities right now, so I think SEC has a max award of about $1 million. So we're still looking out there, looking for money for grant opportunities. I know they're submitting to CZM, I believe, to try to get some more and close the funding gap. But we could be ready to go out to bid, later this spring, summer. Again, we're waiting on Chapter 91 licensing, permitting for that one. So, that's really the holdup.
Is there any grant money we already have awarded for that?
I don't believe so. Yeah, I mean, the design was funded through a grant.
Yes.
But I don't know as though we have anything besides the SEC.
I do know there's a $300,000 request for CPC,
Okay, that's there.
whether it's to make up for the grant shortfall or more incidental, I'm not sure, but there is some money in this year, that FY 26.
I know in the discussions, the expectation was virtually all of it could probably wind up with grant. Right. Covered by grants. one way or another.
Would this would be considered priority over the other grant stuff where like the Morse Pier and Reed Park, I mean.
I think they're optimistic that we, will get, given the kind of wide variety, especially with Moore's being more commercially focused. It's kind of separate, but my understanding is they, are putting in for all of them, with the hopes that, we get those awards, especially since they've already funded design. And that's kind of their typical model where they fund design and then they'll fund construction.
Is that what the 520,000 is there? Is that Morse Pier?
No, so again, that's an old number that I just left it, but that was for the harbor master office. And I'm not actually up to date on what that number is.
Yeah.
I think it was, there's a lot of different things that are forming. So yeah, that number isn't in anybody's budget, I don't think it's not in the official budget.
Or rent in the community center.
But there's that, I know Brian's looking at a floating one. So I'm not trying to speak for that, those are just placeholder numbers that I have before.
Yeah.
So this is probably the kind of where we'll get into maybe some of the details on Y26, but in terms of operating, the budget that I think Greg put in there to present to you guys, and obviously I was involved, but that was fairly, I would say, level budget. I think there were some pretty significant reductions in the operating stuff in certain areas that, will hopefully offset some of the increases that we're gonna see. So I know there was a question about salaries, I think that's been explained, but in general, all basically union. And then, we have the OPM stuff that Nate's handling, so that was, basically a step for him. The two bullets I have on here are kind of things that I'm waiting on that, I have a placeholder that hopefully takes it into account, but until I get the contract, I don't know. The disposal, so all of our curbside disposal goes to Wheelbrader in North Andover. That contract is up this year, so FY '26, we start a new contract. I think based on this year's number, we're at like $93 or $93 a ton, or roughly 1,000 tons a year. That number's probably gonna go from 93 to, over 100, so much more than 2.5–3%. I'm still waiting on that exact number.
And when do you expect to get that?
I expected to get it 2 weeks ago, but the guy's been putting me on, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so we have another option.
Well, so the second bullet there, the curbside disposal, that's with our current vendor is Republic, who was JRM. Their contract is officially up after FY '26, so we're scheduled there. They would love to renegotiate that contract because it's a 5-year contract that they're getting, killed on based in today's dollars. Plus they took it over from JRM, so JRM probably was significantly less than, their structure is now. However, regardless of if we go with Republic or not, the industry is looking toward more automated curbside collection. So one person in the truck driving, but nobody on the back of the truck throwing bags. So we would need to go to a cart-based system, which, so they would, even if we don't, rip up next year's contract with curbside, and we just, add 5 years or add 10 years beyond that and stay with Republic, they will give us, they'll offer us their best rate to not have to go through the bidding process and, So, we'll evaluate when we get it. I'm sure you guys will be involved. But that has not happened yet, but that is in the works. And so as part of that, they do have the ability to dispose of our trash. It'll probably get railed out to Ohio or New Jersey or something like that, but so they could potentially be competitive. I don't know. Like, we'll see.
So what happens now? They pick it up, but they truck it to North Andover?
Right.
Okay,
Yes, incinerated.
but you're saying we might be able to negotiate it, so they truck it and deal with it, and we don't have a separate contract with North Andover.
I will say, it's probably not gonna be cheaper, but it would lock us in, for whatever that term is. The issue with, we certainly don't want to give up North Andover without being very comfortable with Republic. Because if we don't renew our contract with North Andover, there is no option B.
Yeah.
There are no incinerators being built, there's no landfills being opened. There is very few options for disposal. So, it's not much of a negotiation, that contract.
So if we were to leave Wheelabrator, is it likely that we would not be able to use them again in the future?
Exactly.
Okay,
We would lose our spot.
okay.
Closer.
What are the chances of a new contract involving this automated pickup system?
So, if we decide not to, if we stick with Wheelabrator, we stick to the last year of our contract, we will go out to bid again next year.
Yes,
And we will offer, it'll be Republic, it'll be Casella, it'll be Waste Management.
Capital Ways.
Whoever wants, so they will, be our curbside contract. For usually it's a 5-year term for trash. And recycling.
but I'm talking about this one man per truck.
Right, so anyway, so the industry is going that way. Republic, it may be on the beginning of that trend, but you can imagine most of their costs are in their labor and their insurance. And the whole reason that Republic is going away from now is they had a person on the back of the truck get hit. And it's a fatality, it's Texas. So they're basically making a company policy now to eliminate that, and probably to some extent probably makes them more competitive because they're getting rid of the guy on the back of the truck, but on the other hand, they have to update their trucks to all be the automated carts. And then somebody has to pay for the cart, so whether they build that into a contract or we pay for it separately, the carts are not, that's a $100,000 to $200,000 item as well.
And what's the implication to the homeowner? They have to get
Yeah,
all
that's what I'm wondering.
barrels and things to
Yeah.
get the system.
So that's what I'm saying, either we bury it into our contract costs with the vendor, or we buy them separately and hand them out, or we make the resident responsible for it, which that's not the way it works. We'll provide it, it'll just be part of our fee.
I would be very much against charging the
residents for those bins.
Well, more importantly, we're losing the revenue from buying the bags.
Right, so that's another factor is, how, we could still make it a pay as you throw, and they do have a camera on the, arm to kind of, know if somebody is circumventing the system. But it's much more right to get taken advantage.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You put one orange bag on top and then the rest are.
You see the revenues
I
on
see.
here for trash collection, but where is the line in here for the cost? You mentioned there's a placeholder, but I've
I
gone
thought
through
there was a
both.
section
I've
for
gone through the
sanitation,
online
I don't see it.
and the book, and I'm
Yeah.
not seeing the cost line for trash disposal and sanitation.
So. I Definitely provide it in my online.
We don't have the online.
Or can you tell us what page it's on the online?
Oh, he's got, you don't have online.
So I have the other thing, I just don't have it tapped out, but, it's definitely.
So it's about 400, probably what, 450 to,
About 100K a year for the disposal, the wheel grader. It's about, it is 300K a year for the curbside.
okay.
And then we have a disposal cost for the recycling, which is less than 100, probably 60, 70 grand a year. And then we have a charge for dumpsters, with like 20K a year.
Yeah.
And then we have separate line for disposal of the stuff at the transfer station.
Okay.
And just operate.
So as far as trash, we would recognize as opposed to something coming out of the, about 500,000 in cost. And the revenue on that is,
It's more than 500,
and the revenue
600 off the top of my head.
was about 300,000 in revenue from stickers.
Yeah, we're definitely not making the.
We never have. I'm just curious what the delta is, if the delta's getting bigger.
Yeah, so it's been a few years, definitely, since we upped the price for the orange bags, and then I would say another element that I didn't have in my slides is. I believe our contract with Up to Waste Zero, who is the provider of the orange bags, so. 100%, nothing seems to ever get cheaper, so. Probably slightly different.
But that, well, that's impacted by what you do with the public, right?
Well,
If you go to the
Yeah, I mean-
bills, you're not gonna have the orange bags.
right, I mean, we can. It'll be
I
happy
would hope you would.
future discussion, we can keep them to try and keep the revenue. So it's not a total hit on the budget, but yeah, you're right.
But just to get rid of the plastics would be great, just the.
But I would just say from a mechanical point of view for our committee, pretty hard to vote on this budget. Not seeing the trash collection number.
Andrea, you want,
It's significant.
So I definitely did that number, it might have just been a page that didn't make it into the report somehow.
I don't see Andrea online, Sarah.
Trash revenue is 299,145.
We have the
Right, we
revenue number,
found that, we
have
just don't have
expense.
the close to
We don't have
500
expense.
plus thousand.
do you know what account the number, the,
Well, I can show it to you on my
Expenses
report, I have my report.
DPW highway, DPW snow. removal,
So-
there's always a separate sanitation.
Right,
There are two sides.
it's definitely there, like, in my report, in my actual budget report. So that's the line, rubbish collection, blah, 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 so 609 was FY25. So those are the two lines that, are kind of the baseline. That also includes our contract with Black Earth, which is the curbside. Compost, which is much cheaper now, they're operating out of country, but not free. So that's where it is in my, just kind of report, so the number definitely exists, I don't know why it didn't get.
Black Earth to pick up the compost and giving them the rent for that property for free.
So it's, sorry, so, yeah, so you're right, Maureen. It's not, it didn't, whatever reason, it didn't make it into this
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking actually at the first 2 quarters of 24, which is half the year, it's 240,000, so you double that, you're basically coming up close to 500.
That's the total cost.
Well, that's a snapshot of the first 2 quarters of fiscal 24-25. It's 239,000 for disposal expenses, which I presume is Andrea's roll up for.
And so that, yeah, so that's that, you can see the encumbered numbers are different, you know, roughly lag in the.
This is her quarterly,
Right.
detailed report of all budgets and.
Yeah. Yeah, so the one I have on the screen now.
Unfortunately, that doesn't tie
Possible food testing.
received for the fiscal 26 budget. Well, we do. I'm wondering what else is missing.
So, yeah. FY 25 budget was 609. I certainly wouldn't have lowered it. Potentially it could be the 100K number that I ballparked for the disposal wheel grader.
Let's not discuss it.
Good note.
Does us no good if we don't have the number.
Question just on the DPW, the highway thing, it looked like there's a delta reduction in miscellaneous maintenance and repairs from 78 to 55, and what's happening there?
Great. Great enough. I was not offering. I think it was the big bottom line. Or, so we will be managing that line very closely.
So you have a lot of assets.
Now,
So it always comes down to, you know, between that item and the vehicle repair maintenance line, just the other kind of big one on that. Yeah, and I will say, you know, we are replacing this in this year's capital budget, replacing the front end loader. But that goes down, that's gone down a couple times in the last couple of years. You know, it's 15,000, 20,000 to repair. I don't know what goes. So the fact that it'll be new and under warranty, you know, we have less risk of blowing the, you know, vehicle repair line.
Do we keep the old one for parts or do we salvage it?
No, it's part of the trade-in, so that
Oh.
250 number includes the trade-in.
the clerk of the works.
Right.
That was a new position, right?
Mhm.
And that was supposed to last for 5 years, so were we able to get the person who we expect to work for only 5 years?
I'll say, what's every time?
Good.
Very, very,
Um,
Years ago, I think we changed the tree policy in the town. I think we can. I'm curious what you think the impact has been. I think it's been a couple of years since that policy changed. I see this budget moving right along, but has this become a substantial greater burden? Because I think we expanded at what I believe to be town trees.
yes. Definitely a greater burden. I think a lot of it falls on the select board for being the arbiters of the trees. But I think we've kind of reined that in a little bit in terms of it's, you know, 1 or 2 meetings a year for tree hearings.
It's quarterly, but there seem to be fewer trees per quarter.
You know, certainly, you know, it's a tough one. You know, we have a quasi volunteer tree warden who, you know, does a great job, knows a lot about trees more than I'll ever know, but also is not a full-time employee, so it's back and forth, it has to happen. And now he's, you know, evaluating that many more trees. You know, residents are rightfully nervous about trees, so they want, you know, want to know the liability and stuff like that, so we haven't, you know, we haven't had any, you know, pre-failures that have resulted in, you know, big issues, but, you know, it's definitely a push and a pull. We manage it.
Yeah, it is. It's picking up a greater burden. Yeah.
is the select board going to consider revisiting that policy?
I think actually, you know, whether the select board knows it or not, I've, you know, talked to Jody, you know, we've come to terms with, you know, the certain things that make sense and certain things that don't make sense, and we should, you know, it's a living document, there's no reason we can't change it, so she's, I think, looking at that. Okay, you know,
Yeah, that was revised about, I'd say, 3 years ago.
Right.
It was not very far, and I'm not
But
sure,
11 feet is.
I'm not sure how much it was revised or changed as opposed to just
There was no
modernized.
Yeah.
I don't know what the changes were that might have increased our burden.
It include the specific depth from the street.
From the street,
Right.
that was the
And I would say,
problem.
the biggest thing from my perspective is, and the tree, you know, we wouldn't have known it when we were doing the tree policy, but like other areas in the bylaws, you know, say parking. It very specifically says, on School Street, you can park on this side for this distance in this area. Pleasant Street, Beach Street, you know, all of them are done. We really needed to do the same thing on trees, because I don't think that the intent of the tree policy was to own every tree on every road for 11 feet.
Right.
But certainly on Pleasant Street, we should. On School Street, we should. But on Crooked Lane, we should not. Like it's the Forest Street, we should not. So that's what I think needs to be
So you're saying,
addressed.
bound the geographic locations of where that town.
And I know,
That makes a lot of sense.
talked to Jody a lot about this too, is, you know, she wants a more formal tree list. And I think that's a great idea, but we can't base it on the existing policy because we would own
Yeah.
every tree in Manchester, which is not. So, yeah, we're working together on that, and I think, you know, she's very, very good with the, you know. represents the trees. Well, yeah, so that would be a work in progress, but I don't see it happening this year's budget.
Ask about walls.
All of this like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
The number for the town was just astronomical.
Astronomical.
Yeah.
This tree thing.
What? That shack at the Rosedale Cemetery extension used to be Walt's office. Is that used at all, or do you have any plans for that? It looks pretty run down.
Yeah, I have a lot of plans for that. I plan on demoing it and making it more graves. So that we can, but we have to wait because we actually do use it, like it houses some equipment and some other, you know, stuff.
Street lighting equipment.
Yeah, and so we need the new DPW facility with the cold storage that we don't currently have.
So that's the line, that's the plan, is to make that more graceful.
Yeah.
Question, we're talking about street lighting.
Yeah, I was just looking at streetlight, yes,
So-
that's the question on
So
streetlight.
we have this, again, Gar's predecessor, Mike Pratt, would always talk about reserves and budget high, come in low, money trickles down into reserves. And I'm just looking at the budget we have here for street
You
lighting.
can see that.
It seems like is 30,000 a reasonable number for that, given what we see from year to year? I guess the same thing goes on with the streetlight repairs. Are they getting better? Are they kind of holding their own?
Yeah, so we've been, you know, the ones we're tackling right now are a lot of the direct buried. So the power is fed to the light with a wire that is directly buried in, you know, the ground. There's no conduit. So when we have a break on those lines, which is honestly like the ones we're dealing with right now, it's very hard to pinpoint where the break is and then deal with the repair because we have to involve National Grid. So that's honestly a lot of the back and forth we're having right now is just trying to get National Grid out so we can do the work. So it's those will cost more to repair once we can repair them. And so that's where I think the big number is. We have been doing quite a bit of changeover on the post top lights. So those are the lights, you know, mainly in the village. A lot of them are definitely towards the end of their life cycle and looking pretty, you know, rugged, you know, between the pole or the light itself. So we've been doing kind of some bulk purchases on either poles and lights. So we're kind of, you know, I buy a batch essentially, we do the replacements and then I'll buy another batch. So we're kind of into that cycle right now where I'm gonna be buying another batch that will probably draw off another, you know, $15,000 to $20,000, you know, of where we're at right now. So I fully expect by the end of this year, we'll have, you know, fully expended that budget.
Are we looking at the cost of those lights that are in the downtown area versus lights that are elsewhere and the relative costs?
Yeah, so the downtown lights, we did get, so we had a couple from accidents that were damaged, so we replaced those. We now have one spare headlight and one spare pole, for the future. Those are by far the most expensive ones, and there's 35 of them, I believe. We don't use those anywhere else in town. The other ones that are throughout the village are much more, those are like $750 a pop versus the, ones around Crosby. So those were like, let's say 5,000-ish. Because they're custom made. So,
5,000?
Even those are custom made, you can't.
oh,
get them?
with the pole, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that's-
with the
that's
pole,
like-
because
that's
it's a-
everything.
Yeah, that's a cast, custom cast,
But if something breaks, you gotta replace the whole thing?
no, we've replaced just the pole and just the head, the light head.
So that's something we probably need to look at, see if there's another option.
That's a lot of money.
Are they
So,
starting?
I mean, to be fair, we've only, those don't break very often. So that's those are the first two replacements we've had to get.
Those
We-
aren't that old. Like,
No,
everything
they
else
haven't
is.
been that long.
Yeah.
I don't remember when it was, but it was before COVID, so it was a while ago. But it hasn't been super long and I don't ever recall anybody explaining to us the difference in price of those fancy lights versus.
Maybe it
So
wasn't
that was
great.
part, yeah, that was part of the DIPS Phase 1 project, and those were, I believe, a gift from a resident to purchase the actual
Wow.
lights, yeah.
That's why we didn't
Yeah.
know.
We're on the hook
Yeah.
for the
And
maintenance.
so, and actually, as part of, we had some leftover money in that gift account still.
Okay.
So I was able to fund the replacement of two of those partially with, the remaining of that gift account, fortunately.
So the DIP is talking about
Phase 2, right.
And it might be good for people to say to the DIP, we're not going with the Tiffany.
Yeah.
There should be some historically.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that's charming.
No, and then that's what we're looking, yeah, much more economical.
Yeah.
So you're looking into that?
Yeah, for the DIPS Phase 2, we're looking at much more economical, versions of those lights.
Now, I heard that people were getting mildly electrocuted up on Masconomo Street somewhere. Well, is that like, there was I don't know, I just heard.
That was, yeah, I mean,
Is that a
that's,
direct burial?
yeah, that's the direct burial one, so, somehow the wire got nicked or whatever, in ground, and it just causes that short.
It's usually the pets.
Yeah,
That's what-
Yeah. so it's, I mean, we had a meeting with National Grid yesterday, and they were, kind of talking about their infrastructure in the town and long-term, and they were lamenting about how, poor the electrical infrastructure, in town is, and kind of remnants from the original Manchester Electric days that, things weren't necessarily installed, to today's standards.
Well, National Grid has no records.
Right.
National
Yeah.
Grid could not tell me where my electrical
Yeah.
came to my house.
Yeah.
They had no clue.
Yeah, and so that's part of the issue when
Until
we're
they
going
cut it.
out, trying to find, a single wire down the street, it's like, where does it go? So,
So is something being done about that?
yeah, I mean, we're working with National Grid, it just takes time, they were out the 2 days ago, working on 3 lights that, I'd sent them work orders for, back in October. So it's like 3-month response time to get them to,
Can they pay for that?
because they own the underground. So that's, again, part of the issue is
Yep.
we own the light, they own the underground. We're not allowed to touch the underground. So it's just not the best setup from
So
a
the
practicality of working on it.
The $30,000 line item, that's all just for power, street lights?
No, that's replacements and repairs
And what's the
It's got
second one?
25 grand for
and
the.
as well as new.
And what's the
So
second one?
repairs might be okay, we just need to do a head, or we just need to pay Manchester Electric to go out and rewire something that, was broken.
So 25,000 is minor repairs, $30,000
Yeah.
is for replacement.
Yeah.
And also power, or is that?
No, that's under separate.
That's under town.
Yeah.
Utility.
Yep.
So all of this is kind of repair.
So.
Yeah.
When we took over the lights from National Grid, that was voluntary on our part, correct? Was that not a good financial decision?
I don't know if I have enough of the back history, because I started right after that.
Yeah.
Knowing what we know today about our electrical system, maybe not. That was basically when we converted to LEDs, I believe that was part of the.
That's what we were led to believe, was converting to LEDs would offset any maintenance costs.
Right, which we do save a significant, I think, our utility bill went down like 80%, I believe.
Yeah.
From pre-existing, so.
So there's financial implications of that arrangement, but there are operational service implications.
Correct.
I think that's the
Correct.
question I'm interested in understanding is from an operations standpoint, is it better for them to own the whole kit and caboodle or does that not give us enough of a say in what? it
Yeah,
is?
I would tend to think they would be more responsive to our requests if they own the light entirely versus us owning the light and then, having to put a work order system, in through them, it's.
Do we still have a say in what it looked like?
They weren't repairing them before.
I was gonna say, like, we would still be living with this reality that, at the end of the day, the lights aren't on.
Yeah.
Okay. So operationally, not much, I mean,
That's operationally for us, yeah, they can.
I mean,
Not.
well, that's what I mean, that, are you wasting more time chasing them for what you're chasing them on now versus what you used to chase them for?
They weren't doing anything before.
Yeah,
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, they didn't do anything.
We weren't here. either.
yeah, we weren't here, so I
It
think,
sounds like it was a different crew operationally and
There were different lights.
I think as a service to the town, we can be much more responsive, especially with the controls that we put in, we are able to accommodate, specific requests by residents, if a light shines right into their, bedroom window, we can dim it for them, which we, if they did it, it wouldn't be,
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Sign me up. But, and like the other thing, when that pole that's prone to getting hit on Beach Street, it's mid-block. It's right under a tree that obstructs 90% of it. And I keep questioning, did someone specifically request a light there? Because it's not on us, it's not a crosswalk, it's not a.
What's for,
Well, I mean, there are some lights that are just, mid lights that,
Yeah.
so.
Sure. But I would consider that one would have been a good one to say, if nobody wants it, let's just leave it
Yeah,
out.
but if it's lighting up the sidewalk,
The sidewalks aren't lit up, it's not an urban town, it's more suburban. You have a lit sidewalk at a street corner or a crosswalk.
no, that's not true.
I mean, through downtown, we light them all, but
I mean, I don't think it's a new light, like, we didn't add it, I think it's more just, it was an existing light, so we didn't take it away.
Right.
so I think the question is, periodically, I think, the world around us changes, so periodically it's a good idea to see, do we need to have all the things we have now? And if not, just come forward and, if you have some suggestions on how to improve the situation.
I think this might be one thing. We don't hear from somebody until it's gone, and they say, wow, how could you possibly?
Understand,
Yeah.
but we don't have to keep everything we have, and so it's just, the best judgment.
I think lighting on the sidewalks is very important.
Oh, I
And I can tell you on Bennett Street, it's lit and then you go through this black hole where there's no light. Right.
no, I understand and I agree with you.
So you want lights on the sidewalks with all the ice on it.
But so I think, and I know we're gonna talk snow removal in a minute here, but I think it's just important to understand our inventory and our boundaries. What do we decide to maintain? And then to Sarah's point, let's do it well, right? But it's a little unclear. We have lots of sidewalks that we don't plow, that we don't light. We have some that we do, so it's just inconsistent and it's hard to communicate with the residents and
And to that point, I think one that comes to mind is the streetlight by Crow Island. Another direct bearing that it lost power, no clue where the feed comes from, how to get it. It's kind of a light just that's out in the middle of nowhere. So we, instead of trying to, we did attempt to locate it to repair it, but at the end of the day, the cost benefit.
Right.
So we just took it out.
Good decision.
And did anybody complain? Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Drainage operations via, based on the
I
complaint, right?
understand
So
that.
it's,
I'm just wondering,
it's a
what-
data complaint and a attaboy.
Okay. Don't any more questions on street lighting? Any questions on the highway budget?
Just a question on rentals. I know it's a change. Are we doing more? Or I noticed that to be changing mildly significantly, or I think it's rentals.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the highway budget. I'm looking at expenses at 55401, which is 5 up from the bottom. It says
Okay,
equipment materials. And I was just curious, what's going on,
Right, went up so much.
Rentals for,
I'm sorry, it's my mistake. It's not rentals, it's equipment and materials.
yeah, I think it was
What is
just
that?
based on the prior year's budget being overrun, but. So, we do
Yeah.
rentals for certain stuff. Sometimes we have to rent a flail mower, or, like a skid steer, stuff like that. We did that last year. There's stuff in Crouch Chapel where we have to, is it the lights or the smoke detector or something like that, where we had to rent, a lift. So that's the rental side of things, and then, other equipment that we end up buying. This is kind of like the general, weed whackers, lawnmower, the small push mowers, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think if you look at the actual for 2024, it was 33,500.
We're seeing a double though, that,
And we only budgeted in 25-16, so now they brought it up to 30.
And I just wondered if there was more rental going on or more,
So I think there's definitely more rental.
but that's part of what I sort of a trend, instead of rent it, instead of own it, is what I wonder if you're driving towards.
Yeah.
the big
Well, I
jump
mean,
was 23 to 24.
Yeah, it does.
Excuse me, is anyone monitoring raised hand?
Oh, there's a raised hand, Brenda. I have her not.
We're not taking comments from the public just yet, but we will.
It's 8:30.
Let's see.
The board is still asking questions regarding the DPW budget. When we're through asking the questions, we'll take comments from the public.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay?
Yeah, I just wondered if there was a broader question here that in terms of rentals versus owner, that's all I was driving at.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm sensing nothing dramatic, but it's just.
no, there were definitely a few extra pieces of equipment that we were renting that we, wouldn't normally, but. Yeah, just trying to keep things right.
Okay. Snow removal, Andrea did give me a spreadsheet of expenses going back to 2010.
Okay.
The 24 expenditures were significantly less than prior years. I mean, last year we switched to doing a 3-year average
Exactly.
because that's what the state lets us do. But the 2024 total was 70,000.
Totally different.
2023 was 122,000 and 2022 was 183,000. Is it still realistic for us to use that 3-year average?
Well, I think you would take something off it, which at least in my view, we ought to do.
Right.
I mean, the theory behind the 3 years is, this is the only budget in which we can deficit spend. And the state allows us to use the 3-year average.
I think you could take $20,000 off your average, you get more like 125, 140.
Are we allowed to use below the average?
No,
Right, so we can't.
Yes, we can.
We can take the average, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
the 3-year average is lower than 145.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
I thought it was set on.
No, it is not. She didn't change it.
No, we just, yeah, we start
Last year,
as, you know, the previous year.
I would take 20,000.
You guys want to change it, change it.
Because I think it's above the average. All right.
So the way this translates is last year was $70,000 and we budgeted 160, so the delta of roughly 100,000 goes into reserves. Which basically means that's money that's been collected from people, but isn't,
And we're trying to
and we're
only,
trying to minimize that.
yeah,
May I ask a question about scope?
but what?
About scope, I was wondering how much, excuse me, how much of this snow removal budget is sidewalks?
So that's, I can't really answer that in terms of like, you know, it was $10,000 last week, like, I don't know that number. We own a sidewalk tractor.
Just one?
Yeah, well, yeah, we own one tractor and we own one other piece of equipment that can do sidewalks.
Okay.
Uses other stuff. So that's the equipment we have, and, you know, like I was saying at the beginning, you know, the priority during the storm is always the road.
Right.
And then as soon as the storm is over, whether it's, it all kind of depends on when the storm is, how, you know, intense and so on and so forth, but, you know, as soon as the storm is over, then we focus on the sidewalks with you know, typically the one piece of equipment, and we usually do send it out during the storm. Again, it also depends on the duration.
So we had a discussion on this at the select board on Monday night. I asked for us to have a discussion with you around sidewalks.
Yeah.
Around, not so much,
I would like that not to be in the finance committee.
I'm just meeting, it's about scope and how he's budgeting against the scope. So that's why I asked the question. And so, if you can look into that.
Yeah, so I mean, I've never touched this budget, like our storm response is kind of a standard operating procedure. And then what I think that we're talking about now is if we want to lower, because we haven't really been seeing as much use of the
Okay,
snow
that's why
budget.
I'm asking the question.
We made the decision last year to base it on a 3-year average.
Understand, and I'm trying to.
And if we adjust this to the 3-year average, it would be 125,000 instead of 145. And it doesn't have anything to do with the actual expenses.
I understand.
It's what the state allows us to do.
Understand.
I have a question, are the reserves, if you're under budget, it goes into a reserve. Is that a reserve for snow removal or is that general town?
It's a general fund.
Because I'm looking at the last few years, piled up a bunch of money.
Yeah, that's,
Right.
this continually
And
happens.
that's why we have adjusted the way we look at project revenues and expenses so that we're not taxing people
I
for money
understand
that goes into the.
they should keep it,
And that's why we shoot for 8%.
We were sending
a lot of money.
over $1 million
Oh, really?
at the end of the year into reserves until the last couple of years when we tightened it up, and then it's been like 300,000 or 400,000 at the end of the year. Except for, I think 25 was tighter, but
And I think that's the theme going through this whole budget is, you know, when you look at revenue, are we over projecting? Are we under projecting revenues and are we over projecting costs? And the answer to the end is you never want to run out of money as a municipality, but at the same time, you don't want to finish the year putting
Right.
$1.2 million of taxpayer money into reserves and just keep doing that.
Right.
But I think snow is one of these areas where as much as the town can, we should budget low. And if we have a tough year, we have the last 2 weeks of the fiscal year, we can move stuff around. And we also have our FinCom reserves. So there's tools here to deal with exceptional years, but just loading up this
well, we
expense.
don't
dropping
spend
it.
and pay for it the next year.
That's right.
I think we've done that once.
Right.
Mike just mentioned that more, I totally agree with the snow budget, and that's, you know, $20,000.
It's not changing your operation. This is more of a money thing.
I agree, but on the money side, I do think that we I can't remember how you phrased it just now, but that we, you know, are we over projecting our costs or
Overestimating us.
or our costs? My answer is no, we're budgeting to a number, but I think as I showed earlier in this slide, there is a backlog that we are ignoring. So like I would say, I agree, let's not over budget or, you know, let's rate budget all the operating and everything. The backlog of capital is a monster.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like we don't need to you know, overestimate the snow budget just for the sake of overestimating it, but there is a place for that money to be spent.
But we don't work that way.
But
That's not how it
We're not gonna work that way. We're not gonna budget extra on line items to make it available.
I agree, I absolutely agree, but I'm saying I don't think that it's because, I don't think the tax money is going back to the taxpayer necessarily, I mean, that's great. But we also have a very big backlog of work that needs to be done, and I would hope that.
That's a different budget.
Let's not go down this rabbit hole right now, okay? We're not talking about capital now. We're talking about operating. And does anybody have questions on the DPW facilities operating?
I have one.
Okay,
I'm gonna say the word capital, you're gonna scream, at me, but we carry $50,000 or proposed to in upgrades of buildings. Why is it in the operating budget? I don't know why that sits in capital and is not in the operating budget. That's my question.
general building upgrades.
Yes, and I understand that things like furnace replacements, I don't know, you know.
What are general building upgrades?
But if they're predictable enough to put them in the capital budget, I would think they'd just be, we have to maintain buildings and that should. I'm just talking about location here, that's all.
Yeah, I think again,
And it's gonna be done by taxation,
all fine for me.
so I just wondered why it's the operating budget.
What's the line general building upgrades used for? In capital?
I think it's just the catch-all for everything that we encounter throughout the year at, anything that goes wrong in our buildings that we need to call a contractor in to repair. I wouldn't necessarily call that capital because it's not a planned expense. It's something like, boiler in your house fails, like, you hope you have a little kitty that you can draw on. So, that, I think the same principle here is that it's really just the.
Put it in the operating budget, I mean, I'm still, I
Okay.
understand things
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm suggesting should do,
Okay.
it's part of operations.
Any other questions on
No.
the operating budget?
Not here.
Just, what, the athletic field maintenance? Didn't we just replace so that would be Sweeney Park?
So Sweeney and Pine, that is, because we have upgraded them, they do require to have with the amount of use those fields get, we really need to focus on, aerating them, fertilizing them, making sure that they're mowed and all the overseeded every year to ensure that, the grass is still growing through all the wear and tear. So when you get nice fields, just making sure that they stay nice fields for our continued use.
I'm pretty sure actually also Cheryl doesn't have a budget for that stuff, so
Yeah.
some of,
Right, it was moved.
a very small portion of that budget goes towards, striping the fields and,
Mowing,
Well, we mow them, sometimes we'll pay a contractor mow them, but sometimes we do. It's more like, when I say like strike it for a game, like, when we need to paint the line or something, like that's a different, Cheryl has people do that. Or just like, trying the infield at the, Little League, stuff like that. Also, I think there's like the canteen at Sweeney, needs new, whatever, bubbler or something, stuff like that.
anybody have any more questions on the DPW operating budget? I don't think we can vote on it tonight because I don't think we have all the information. Then I will take comments from the public with respect to DPW operating budget. If somebody wants to raise their hand.
Sarah, would you take down the presentation, the PowerPoint, so we can see you better? Thank you.
Yeah, so I did have one more slide on fleet if there's questions.
Did Brenda have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Apologies, it's Chuck. 19 Ocean Street. With respect to the street light question, I wrote to Mr. Dam earlier in the week about the three street lights that don't work on Ocean Street. So I was a bit surprised to hear his remarks about that tonight, and I wonder if he could expand upon that.
So
Is this Mr. Furlong?
It is.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had the full name.
So
Thanks.
the one we discussed tonight was the one at Crow Island. That one's been removed, as Nate said. There's one at the bottom of, as you're driving down Ocean Street on the White Beach side. That's actually a brand new light. So we were surprised when you reported that it was out. We'll check it. It might be another underground issue, but it was working. And so we're working on the spot there. I'm not sure what the third one is, if it was further up towards Ocean towards Summer, or a different one.
The light opposite Mrs. Nelson's home is out and has been out for 6 months.
So that's a brand new light. So I was surprised that one we're investigating, but it was replaced, so it should work.
Well, it isn't.
Thank you
And
for that.
the light off Crow Island,
Yep, that
a
one's
car
the one
took that out 6 months ago and it hasn't been replaced. So there's 3 lights out of 7 that don't work. So I was just curious what your plan is.
I'm not sure I can answer that. I only understand 2 of them so far. What's the third one?
Well, I don't know which one you don't understand.
The one at Crow Island, we removed. The one at Mrs. Nelson's has been replaced and apparently doesn't work, but we'll figure it out. What's the third one?
There was one on the east side opposite Shark's Mouth that was not working 2 days ago. That's one of the tall lights that appears to be part of the system that's run by National Grid.
So we run all of them, so it's definitely us, but I'll have to look into that one. I wasn't aware that it was out, but we'll look into it.
Okay, well, I did write to you about that earlier in the week. So the other thing that I find interesting, if I may, is it's unclear to me what you're thinking about doing about recycle, trash, et cetera. And if you could bring just very briefly some clarity to what you're thinking we might be doing in the next budget year, I think citizens would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Sure. So I think we discussed it, but so we have an existing contract for curbside with Republic. There's 1 year left on that contract, which would cover all of FY26. At a very minimum, in next year, we will rebid that contract. And we will entertain new vendors. And we will evaluate them based on price as well as other things. It is likely that contract will have to include automated pickup, which means that there's one driver who drives up to your driveway. You have put out a cart, and there's an arm on the truck that will swing the cart into the truck and put the cart back down. That's the automated system. There'll be one truck for trash and one for recycling, like there's now. And we will have to either have the contract include, or the town will have to purchase carts to distribute to all the residents that want to participate in curbside. We may or may not continue the pay-as-you-throw process as part of that. And secondary to this is we have to bring the trash somewhere. Right now, we currently do it with Wheelabrator, which is the incinerator in North Andover. Our contract is up with them this fiscal year. So starting FY26, we'll have a new contract number in place. And unfortunately, I haven't got that number yet, but I have a budgetary number in this year's budget. And there's potential other alternatives, but not many, and they're not cheap for the disposal. Anything else we need to know?
Did that answer your question, Mr. Furlong?
It does. One just point of information for me. That was you've concluded your discussions on the operating budget. Does that imply you're about to have the discussion of the capital budget?
Yes,
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
thanks. Okay. Well, I guess before the capital, we have the enterprise funds.
Numbers are up.
76.
Thank you.
They're right before the deck.
I just,
Yeah, that's the last section.
Yeah.
Anything notable in the sewer budget?
Not off my memory. I believe it's pretty standard. Budget.
The electricity line, the actual
yeah,
was 78,624. Budgeted 125. You requested 126 and the budget is 90,000. Why is that so much higher than the actual in 24?
So you'll recall we had an issue with the solar credits versus the generation charges with National Grid and was it something hollow, Sleepy Hollow, I think, was the generation from the solar farm. So anyway, I don't know, Andrew and Greg handle that end of the
Okay,
budget, and I would just say been a moving target over the last couple of years, but I know for a fact that electricity rates have not gone down.
we'll ask. Oh, scan here.
and the requested for the step further down,
Yeah,
I'm a little confused about what's going on there, so. Requested 25 was 16. Spending the prior year was 18.5 roughly. You're not budgeting 18.5, but you only requested 16.5. What, do I misunderstand? It's now budgeted 18.5? Well, why is it higher than the requested? Is that?
The
I just
actual,
don't understand it. It seems
I think the note on in the margin is,
it's wrong.
you know, like a carryover note that never got deleted.
Maybe it should have been.
In the budget. The request is the request. The distribution materials, that's the, you know, where we kind of pick up the maintenance in the system. So, yeah, it's not necessarily a fixed number every year, but it's something that, you know, we do encounter, and I think it was more you know, my budget request was more based on the FY 24 actual, which was almost exactly 18.5.
right.
Okay.
I mean, is that the lining of the sewer pipes?
No,
No. Distribution materials. I mean, because it's all over the place, then 27,000 in 23, it was 18.5 in 24.
Right.
So 18.5 doesn't seem out of line.
yeah, so I think that's one where we're just trying to, you know, line by line, I try and look at them, you know, individually, and then also help to a bottom line, so I'm just trying to make it all work.
So we should think 18.5 is the amount we should be dealing with, not 16.5.
Right, yeah, I'm not, like I said, I think that
Disregard the comment.
things like a typo.
Chuck, just a question about, is it your team that's running the sewer plant, or you have special people with permits or?
So those are town employees, you know, union
Okay.
contract, DPW, guys, all of them. It's the water treatment plant where we have
Right.
contract ops with water and carbon.
And people's permitting and training and all that stuff is sound for the next couple of years and all that.
Yeah. That actually, the operator, the part of the works that we hired actually has all the licenses, or actually have a little bit of redundancy now, right? I don't know what I asked for.
Yeah.
And he has been, you know, because we're not in full swing on all the other projects, you know, he's been doing a fair amount of the, you know, streamlining the operation. It's great. And permit compliance, with same thing.
Any more question on enterprise sewer? How about enterprise water?
Right.
What is Woodward and Curran contract?
Not for so, so that one were. think we're allowed 2 3-year renewals, and I think we're in the first year of the second renewal. So 2 years here. 5 years.
And at one point, we talked about bringing that in-house,
Right, so that's, I mean. That's,
something you would look at whenever that contract comes up.
yeah,
See if that makes sense. I know the permitting, the training was an issue.
yeah, that's a very specialized skill that not a lot of operators out there. I encourage our guys, you know, on the wastewater side and in the highway to, you know, get their licenses, so that, you know, we have that potential, but not has a lot of.
Anybody have any more questions on the enterprise water?
Maybe not.
That takes us to capital.
You want to vote on those?
I'm not gonna vote on anything for DPW until these numbers are straightened out because there's
One comment
deficiencies.
that on the water, it's nice to see that indirect cost with the pensions, the group, and all that, that like helps the loaded number, like we should do that in
Oh.
other areas.
Yes, it is.
Well, the reason it's done here is because there's a transfer from the enterprise funds. Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah, we're.
But it's nice to see that.
Right.
Discussed at times whether Parks and Recs is a category for this, and even the harbor. And because they're so close on expenses and revenue, said, no, it's better to keep it flexible and not have the enterprise funds.
Right.
What is it? They're so close. I don't know what that means in that context.
So the enterprise funds for sewer and water are usually always net
Yes,
positive.
I understand.
So that works for the town's benefit, but when something is not net positive, like it runs at a loss, you
Okay,
don't. want it to
so
be an
close
enterprise
means
fund.
they are slightly negative.
Correct.
Thank you. I
Or there,
didn't know
there
what
are
that.
times where they come up and they look profitable and it'd be an advantage to being an enterprise fund, but then like a year later, they're not.
Well, and I think the difference is because water and sewer sets its rates
Yep,
Right.
to the enterprise fund expenses.
Yeah.
You don't have that in Parks and Rec or Harbor.
Rules for
Yeah.
enterprise
I just didn't
funds.
know what the expression is being offered, tactically close.
Okay, DPW capital. I think we've talked about road resurfacing enough.
I do have a question, just, so this is 300,000. I know Nate and Chuck, we've talked about really taking your long-term view, 500,000. I'm not asking this increase, but I'm just. When you do that longer look, 10 million, 20 years, so just, so we're not spending at the level, at least that you project for the longer term.
Right, so we'll make note of that, the fact that they say they need 500K
Okay,
when we circle back around and do the final capital,
okay.
okay?
That's a budget number looking at a 20-year horizon, but like from year to year.
Yeah.
It can
No, no, I
plus or minus
understand.
that number.
But the run rate is, I've asked you about that and I just want to note it.
Yeah.
It's noted, got it.
Drainage sidewalk improvements. What's this number based on?
So like I said, it's, we're gonna have to do the Pleasant Street sidewalk. So, and then we actually do have some drainage on Pleasant Street that needs to be done when we're paving. So that's, probably the bulk of that. This is also where we pay for MS4 compliance, which is the drainage permit that we have. So there's a fair amount of work that we do every year, catch basin cleaning, street sweeping. Everything.
That's me, that's such a operating.
That comes out of that line.
Yeah, wow.
I mean, it's significant, it's 150,000 a year.
It's another example of that.
That's why the sidewalks aren't been improved.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the sidewalks are keeping up. I mean, there's always gonna be more work to do.
Oh, yeah.
That's a fair statement, but I think we,
To me, it's the run rate, if it takes us that a year, that should be understood as being an operating cost.
Maybe it's here because it's a big line item. It's.
Right. Yeah, that's just the way it's always been. I don't really have a preference as long as it's always.
Yeah, but we want maintenance to be an operating, not.
I agree.
Yeah.
But it's just a big number. It's a lot of little stuff that goes
Right,
into
but
that.
I think, the problem, that I've seen, there's certain areas where things get moved like that from year to year, especially big numbers. It changes the percentages and then, you spend more time explaining the percentages. I've heard Kathy say before, it looks like the, operating budget went up, 10% last year, and why is that? It's like, well, maybe something, maybe, the union contracts were, more than their typical 2.5%, or stuff like that, so. There's always a reason, but I think that's one of the reasons why something like this gets put somewhere. It ended up just staying there because it doesn't rock the boat on the other percentages that you see elsewhere. in the budget.
We just want the operating budget to be realistic.
Yeah.
And if it's in capital, it's not realistic. That's kind of where we're coming from. DPW facility, I think.
Well, I raised my question on that one.
Well,
Jet?
I'm sorry, excuse me, that upgrades, excuse me, not facilities, sorry, I misheard the line. I know you're on facilities. And
that's 100% for the design work of the facility, up to 50% or a certain percentage. And then taxation's 200,000 and 660. I thought we weren't doing that.
No, we're going to talk about the funding separately.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, but that's like for about 50% of the DPW facility design? Is that?
That's what we're all marking it.
I think we've already said we think the general building upgrade should be an operating.
yes. And no further comment on it.
What's driving the Ocean Street study is some.
Can you just remind me about the Ocean Street study? I'm sorry, I don't remember what.
Yes, that came up at a select board meeting because we did not get the grant that we had hoped to do the study to figure out what the heck we're gonna do with Ocean Street. So that's our second or third attempt at a grant. At some point, we have to figure out what we're gonna do with Ocean Street. So, I think the question is $100,000 the right amount?
Do you think that's low or high?
Yeah, it's in your budget.
Yeah, so we've gotten a couple different numbers from a couple different consultants on that. So, there's kind of the high-end budget, which we went for the grant for, which included a lot more of a process, a public process with, doing design charrettes and, it's just a different level of design. The other question we had, we really need the engineering to happen. And so that 100,000 will cover the engineering, which will be the modeling of the, inundation models, the, sea level rise models, all that, and then applying that to the, the conditions of the road, existing culverts and, resource areas and stuff like that. So that's what that number covers. That's significant.
So this is really an Ocean Street engineering study.
So, I'm not sure I understand what you said, so if I could ask a clarifying question. The thought process here is we need to come up with some set of options that we can discuss with residents, kind of like we did with the rotunda, but we don't have to have, fancy visuals and, So will this $100,000 get us options that we can have a good discussion with the residents?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
part of that is the modeling.
Yes, I mean, that's a lot of technical detail. You guys are the experts. I'm just saying.
Yeah, so this will give you.
Conversation with.
This will give you the preliminary design alternatives.
Okay.
And, it might, we'll definitely get into, from A to Z. So like, there's gonna be interim steps, interim things that will kind of evaluate that.
Now can we go back to your last page on your presentation on the vehicle stuff? Should be able to get back in.
Bigger.
Did you leave Zoom?
No, I'm still here. I'm not gonna find the share button. Yeah, it's could get bigger in a second. Sure. A little bit better.
Yeah.
I can make it zoom in on my screen if you need. I guess in terms of this year's budget, I think we're getting the front end loader and we're getting the replacement pickup. The front end loader went down from the original ask from 300 to 250, then, so that includes the trade-in, and the number is actually cheaper than I thought, so, we feel like we did okay there. So that's 250 replacement, that's, front end piece of equipment that we use a lot.
And how old is it?
Want to say. Spreadsheet, so. 2008, so 17 years. So that's very good. And I heard, I don't know if this is true because I was around, but I heard that was a used front end loader we got. So there we go. But like I said, the last few years we've spent about 50,000 for our maintenance budget on it.
Now vehicles.
So
You want to replace a pickup truck?
Yep.
How many pickup trucks do you have? How many people do you have? I want to understand all of your little things that are driven. How many people you have and whether there's any equipment that is sized such that you need special qualifications to drive it, and if so, how many people are qualified and how many are there?
So I think we only have one piece of equipment, like dump truck, that's big enough to require, actually, no, I take it back two. We have the Peterbilt and the New Freightliner. That require CDL. We have Jason, Frank, Dewey, and Sean. I think we have 4 people that can drive those 2 trucks. I actually have been talking to the guys, so we have those 4 plus 1, 2, 3, 4 more in the department, and on the highway side, that don't have the license to be able to drive those, but we have been talking to the guys about, they might want to get those licenses down. They're very expensive, time consuming, so I can't let all of them get them, and we need to have some sort of agreement in place where, they don't just get that CDL and then go and drive for, tractor trailer company. So that, that's in the works, so that, 2 of those guys are probably gonna retire in the next few years, so, we wanna be able to, backfill that, but, so there's only 2. And we also have 3 guys in the water department. I would say 2 of them could potentially, someday operate them, and that would be to the town benefit in terms of, snow removal, plowing, stuff like that. Just, have more people capable. So that's, 10 overall out of 12 guys that, in the department and that kind of realm.
Okay.
And we have the backhoe and the front end loader we have a union contractor designated equipment operator. He's typically the guy who drives those, but most of the guys have the required licensure to also drive those to operate them.
And how old's the backhoe?
That was last year, so that's
Okay, that's why I thought we bought something recently.
again, that's a front end piece of equipment that we don't, have a backup, so, we want to keep those in good shape. When they go down, we get that fixed immediately. So, I'm saying for so I think we have 7 pickups, including maybe 8, including the water department. I think it's more like 10.
We can look at the schedule.
Well, I wasn't counting like the DPW, the director pickup out back, yeah, 350. There's one that's at the sewer plant usually. So like there's not, I wasn't counting all those. And so some of those on the list they're, referred to as a 350 or 550. Some of those have dump bodies, some of them have utility bodies, so they're not, they're used for different stuff.
$200 of rolling equipment, when you take this page.
Right.
If you take the weighted average of how long they last, it probably runs us about 225 a year, just just if you took the rolling out, some last 15 years, some last 7 years. But you're looking at about 225, if you just are looking at every year.
Replacement fund.
Thank you, replacement fund. I know we don't want to do a replacement fund, but that's what you look at when you're looking at these
But-
values.
How many of these? You said there's total 12 people?
Well, so depends on how you do it. I'm only counting 12 in the highway and water department. Then there's me and Nate and this guy, the sewer department. The sewer department doesn't need a dedicated truck all the time, but they do need a truck. So we share it within the department, stuff like that. So
How many
if you want to
people in
throw
the sewer?
5, including the clerk of works.
Chuck, does this account for the fact that once we get the new water meters in, we won't have to have people driving around to get the measurements?
Well, so that piece of that truck, the only part that makes it special for meter reading is we have a laptop that we put in.
No, I mean, but I don't know how much time they spend driving around to read the water meters, but that's a task that will no longer exist.
Right.
After we get the new meters.
I'm sorry, I would like to first understand how much equipment there is, how many people there are to drive it, and how many pieces of equipment are used every day. I want to get down to the basics before we start talking about.
So I mean, I think I've answered it. So, we have 12. I think we have 12 guys in highway and sewer,
Highway and water.
highway and water, sorry.
Yep.
5 more at the sewer.
Yep.
Me and Nate in the office. That's it. Obviously I'm not counting the office staff that
Right.
needed cars. So Nate and I generally share the F-150. Sometimes, the guys at the sewer plant do need to, bring lab samples and stuff to different labs and, go pick stuff up and, they need to make a grit run with the grit. So, they'll use the pickup for the, for the lab stuff. They'll use a dump truck from the highway guys for the grit run. There could be, there are times where we bring pieces of equipment, like backhoe down there because we're dropping in a pump or we're redoing the biofilter. So we need those pieces of equipment. The larger dump trucks, we use those when we're, doing water main breaks, obviously when we're doing sanding, plowing, that kind of stuff. We do the beach cleaning, we have our equipment on site, the bigger trucks. The smaller dumps are for, we're going to loom something to get dug up at the cemetery or, we have a mini excavator that was only, probably 5 or 6 years old now at this point. That's used for some of those smaller jobs, digging graves. So, we have a flail attachment for that, for, chopping back the vegetation on the side of the road to, open up the view. Is there anything else I'm missing? You guys want to know?
I still don't understand how many pieces of truck equipment. I'm not talking about things attached.
Right, so I think
How many of these trucks are being used every single day and how many are sitting in the lot? Because when I walk by DPW, there's lots of vehicles in the lot.
so almost every day.
Yeah.
Almost all of the equipment is used. The bigger pieces of equipment are used for the days that we have, those tasks. So cleaning the beach, digging a grave, hauling material from water main breaks or going to pick up material from the yard. So, we have a stockpile of crushed stone, of
And that's the 550s or something else.
no, those are the bigger ones.
What's bigger?
The Peterbilt's a Freightliner. But only
Okay.
one of the Freightliners needs the bigger license.
So there's two big ones that are used as needed.
Right. So I'd say those don't necessarily get used every day,
Yeah, which I can
but we
understand.
definitely need them, you know,
Okay.
they're big ticket items. If we did not have them, it would inhibit our operations. Often.
But it's all these other trucks.
Right, and so those are used almost every day. You know, in the summertime, we use a lot more of the pickup trucks, you know, the F-350s. Whether it's the, you know, the dump bodies or the utility bodies to pull around, the equipment for mowing the lawns.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the summertime, we definitely have a deficit of trucks, but, you know, make it work, because usually it's two guys to a truck going to mow the lawn. You know, not everybody needs to go to the cemetery to mow them, but, you know, they all get used.
So what are you replacing?
Well, this is the most decrepit one,
What?
the three.
150, 350, 450, 550? It doesn't say.
I think it's 350.
I think it definitely does.
I think it's the,
So
it's the one you.
we're getting a 350 pickup and it's replacing a 350 pickup.
Maybe that was like 80,000 or
It's
So 90K.
90.
It's
So
$1 million.
The state bid list, so all these are taken off the state bid list. The state bid list went crazy. This is the first time we've really been,
That's what we
you know,
asked.
replacing kind of those smaller, the last few years, we replaced the backhoe and the big dump trucks. And one of the small ones.
That's right, okay.
This is the first year we're
You
replacing
need
like one of
this
the
for
350
conversation.
era trucks. And the price went from like 60 grand, usually what we were carrying, to
I
90.
don't know how I got that. Anyway.
But I mean, it's all on the state bid, not like detail on the truck.
Would 90 be enough to use for that line, or do you want to keep it at 120 and base?
No, we
I'm
want
not
it
advocating anything.
changed to 90. Greg told us it was changed.
There was already changed.
Originally, my original budget before we had gotten the revised quotes from the state bid list was I thought I was gonna replace two
For 60.
Yeah.
350s, and they were both for 60 grand. The pricing came back for, you know, the 350 was 90. If I wanted a 550, it was like 110. So I just said, okay, we'll just take one and and it's 90, so it's like, honestly, we saved 30 grand in the budget, but I'm only getting one vehicle inside too.
Do you have any opportunities for getting electric vehicles for the highway department?
Right, so we started looking at that a lot more seriously. I think the first one, and this is a couple of years down in the fleet plan, was to replace, and it's not really replacing, it's taking the electric, or the F-150, giving it to the mechanic who does need to make runs to get, you know, mechanic stuff. Cause he's using an old hand-me-down police cruiser Explorer, so we would get rid of that. You'd take the F-150, and then we'd get DPW director, electric pickup, because that would be the easiest way to transition the department to electric, is in the guy, like, oh, I did the police, like,
Yeah.
if he does it, then the guys below him will do it. That's-
There's not a lot of good there's options out there right now for like the 150 size range pickups.
Yeah.
But once you get above that, there's really not a lot of good options. Then you have to get into the electrical infrastructure that you would need, which we would basically have to redo all the electric at DPW to support the types of chargers we would need, you know, to support an electrified fleet.
Are you gonna be looking at adding solar to the DPW
Oh, yeah.
garage?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right, so both EV charging as well as, you know, just a higher form of electric service, and the more efficient stuff like geothermal as well as solar at the new site is part of the plan. We'll have to see where all that fits when we get to that level of design.
Go
So
ahead.
just a question, on the number of trucks. My question was, the truck that does go around and reads the meters, how many hours a day is that truck being used for that purpose? And basically, once that meter reading goes away, would you need one less truck? You know, can you do with one less vehicle? Because that task isn't being done anymore. That's really my question.
My initial reaction is probably not, because we only read meters once a week every quarter.
Okay, that's what I'm
So,
asking.
yeah, so it's not every day that they're going around to do
Understand.
that
That's
task.
my question.
And so like, that's why we don't have, like, if that were the case, we might have a dedicated truck, but it wouldn't be a F-350, it would be it'd be an Explorer or something.
Yeah.
Something much more efficient.
Yeah.
It'd be the electric. Yeah. Honestly. But we're not gonna be going in that direction, we're not gonna need it.
Any, are you have questions on DPW cabinet?
Do we include the sewer?
What?
Sewer as well? The sewer at the bottom. Like upgrades. That
Oh, okay.
But I have a comment about the vehicles for just a second.
Mhm.
As we go into the years where we have a lot of, I think, bonding on large projects, I think we really need to keep our eyes on the fact that it really runs about 250 or 225 to keep the rolling stock going. And it can get lost in all those very big numbers that we're going to be faced with as we look at the future. That's a comment, not a question,
Okay,
because I've done the mathematics, that's what I'm trying to get at.
okay.
Maybe we can get a copy of this. Or it's
Yeah.
like-
So I believe that was, I'll forward this, I'll forward it all, but yeah.
We haven't received that.
Nate, did you send this to me? Because I have the fleet list.
Peter has it, but I've
I think
never
I must
seen
have.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, Andrea sent it to me, so I know I sent it right, but it's all.
It didn't
I'll
get
send it.
us.
Gene, do you have it? The fleet list?
I don't think so.
Okay, so, okay.
You're special.
Oh, wow, I am special.
Or it could be in the lead.
It might have been one of the things you.
Yeah, I might have been, yeah, it might have been one of the
I-
documents I cited.
We talked about it, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I didn't see, and the question I had was the plant upgrades for sewer. When we haven't done the big upgrade yet, is this like a follow-up?
So, that number is actually built into the rate.
Yeah.
So
It's a.
that, before the big, bonded project, we were kind of doing a, general $300,000 to $500,000 a year that's built into the rate already. And it was going towards, larger thing, because, we have a lot of things that break. And so that was just the catch-all for the kind of unforeseen capital that we're gonna need. So I would prefer to keep it there because, it's in the budget, but it's also gonna help us, as we progress through this design and things get left behind or, kept in, from year to year. That's where that's gonna come from.
Right.
Unless we wanna go back to, another bond or something like that right away, but like, I just think it makes sense to leave it for now.
But this is capital and not maintenance type stuff.
Well, I mean, again, where you draw the line, it's capital.
What I'm getting at is,
It's not,
Not a regular expenditure.
it's not keeping the lights on, it's
Okay.
not, Won't go so far as to say it's a new generator yet, but it might turn into a new generator.
but if we needed relief on this $3.2 million capital total, that might be one place that we could look at because
It
we're
will,
already doing something.
it will absolutely go into that,
It would, but okay.
but it won't, I doubt it will be to make that 3.2 number 2.9, it'll be to make that 3.2 number 3.5.
Right, no, I get.
Last year, did you have the 200,000 and did you spend it last year on capital stuff?
I mean, so we actually had been, the approach had been up until last year with bond, over the last 5 years before that. Was to, the 300 number was supposed to, turn into over 4 or 5 years, 1.2, 1.5. The problem was we were spending it without actually getting a $1.5 million project. So the 1.5 turned into 3, and, right, that's where we're at.
So we'll get, before we do the capital, I'll ask Andrea to have all of the capital projects and what's been spent and what hasn't.
That'd be good.
Okay. So that we'll be able to figure out. She gave it to us a while ago.
Right.
I think it was last spring. We really should have it as of the end of 24. Does anybody on Zoom have any questions with respect to DPW capital? Don't see any hand raised. I'm going in the right direction, I don't want to be talking. Anything else on DPW?
Not here.
Okay, thank you.
Dismissed.
Thank you.
We're dismissed.
Thank you all.
We're not gonna discuss communication plan tonight because it's 9:30. We haven't heard anything from Andy.
I'm here.
Did you have any questions?
I had a couple, but I think they mostly got answered along the way.
I forgot about you, I'm sorry.
I'm not offended.
Voted on anything.
I know, we'll have to be going back over everything anyway.
Do you want me to send you the slides? Any other questions?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll send three.
Yes, please.
Whatever other documents I have.
Yeah.
Think of anything else, let me know.
Okay. Thanks. Did people have a chance to look at the minutes? They good?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I was really.
Okay.
They're tough. I think you got me.
Yeah. I might get there things early.
Big time.
Yes,
What dates do you want to do?
we only have the ones from this past week that we haven't.
I know we also have one in Canada in that. So. Thank you. You're right.
Thank you.
They got finalized and posted.
Right, so I believe that we are approving the minutes from January 15th.
Correct. That we adopt the minutes, February 15th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
More seconds. Any discussion?
There was a. There was something about, I want to, the police overtime, how it went down because it went, a lot of that salary went to the training line. And I question whether that was gonna be the CPA people are gonna, with the company, if they have training versus salaries. The very salary versus training, if that's appropriate. Accounting practice. But I don't know,
That has nothing to do with the minutes.
well, I had asked that, it wasn't in here. But I don't know if we need to put anything,
Yeah. I
it's
think
not
we're
that
okay.
important.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Dean,
Abstain.
Peter,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Sarah votes yes. Our next meeting is on January 29th. And it will be the schools. The school district came back and said they wanted to stick with the 29th. So it should be, it will still be a preliminary budget. I don't know where they are in their budget process, but they will be here. And then we'll also look at if we have numbers, new numbers on the voc tech. We'll look at that budget too.
And will we receive anything other than send this book before that meeting?
I will check.
Committee,
Yeah.
very budget.
And I think our request was that we would just meet town of Manchester with the school.
Correct.
I mean, I was thinking we could put as much as 17 million in the school this year, but Essex isn't gonna match that with the portion, so.
Well,
we're still at that.
I don't think we're dealing with Essex. Okay.
It's separate.
Yeah, I think that the purpose of this meeting with the school district is to understand how they're coming up with their budget
Right.
and for us to raise any concerns we might have regarding the level of the budget.
Right.
It's really not our responsibility to delve into the details a lot, because the school committee does that, but it is our responsibility to raise a red flag if we feel the budget's not appropriate. Or if, for instance, they don't have final numbers for health insurance and what they're gonna do with the final numbers coming lower, how that money will be.
Well, they reported all on the Essex building that is being considered. I know they have the operating budget. I think that's what you were just commenting.
Operating and capital,
So they will
but
be.
the school,
I don't know.
the building, but we can ask.
Okay.
We certainly can ask about it, sure, yeah.
That $660,000 study, how it's coming.
I am sure that
That's.
Pam will have information that we certainly can ask. But we can ask it,
Okay,
I-
but that was in the scope
Sure,
of what we're
yeah.
trying to do here.
anything to do with this regional school district.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is our only opportunity this year to meet with them.
Okay.
So we need to get all our questions asked and raise any concerns we may have, and, you know, we still have opportunity to have input into their budget because it might be final. Yeah.
We were going to talk about library and town government next week. We moved that out to February 12th.
Sorry, I'm gonna move, but yeah, I don't need it.
So fire is on February 5th. And the 12th now will be library in town, which is where it was originally. So Greg suggested last week that maybe we would move it. So 2/5 is fire. 2/12 is library in town. 2/19 is CPC
Good, I
in
told them,
town.
get the last.
Good. And Andrea confirmed today that Dan Sherman and the auditors can meet on 3/5. They'll be remote. Okay?
And CPC was the 19th.
19.
Yeah. And 2/27 is capital. And we're obviously gonna have to circle back around on DPW.
Will we get something to look at on the school budgets before?
I'm gonna ask,
Yeah,
that's what Peter asked.
it's like, what questions are we gonna have, you know?
We have the original one
We
they
do
came
have,
up with.
okay,
Yes.
Well, I do.
yeah,
But it's
what's
in there.
that, it's on the website.
Yeah, I pulled it down from the school website. They have a section on budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay,
And this was the one that came out in December.
right,
I don't think they put anything up there, but I think they've done work.
yeah,
So I'll have to see I'll ask Pam if she has updated numbers. To meet, when she meets, you know, to share.
yeah, I didn't see any, I looked before we had the joint meeting, I didn't see anything, but it's since then. They came out with, I think, a preliminary 8% increase,
9.8,
yeah, so I haven't seen that one yet.
okay,
Part of that's a placeholder on healthcare coverage.
Good,
and that was really before the school committee had worked on it.
yes, okay, so they started there with.
Yeah.
That was the posture.
Anything else? People want to raise?
Greg wasn't here tonight, is he
No.
okay?
Yeah, he has, he was hoping to join in, but I
Oh,
think he did.
okay, I didn't know if he was ill, but.
He's western part of the state or something he's all week at some conference. I think that they had something tonight.
Yep. I was just
So
concerned.
he said he couldn't make it and that he would try to.
Just asking you one question about the full price. So when we look at a budget that's got an expense that's greater than the revenue of the prior year, we can assume that will get adjusted, so it covered. In other words, if you look at sewer, the budget that we looked at for sewer is slightly larger by a small percentage than the revenue was last year. So that adjustment will be made by the selectmen, will do
With
that?
new rates.
Okay, so that just gets.
I believe,
We don't have to do something. big.
now, I believe they approved the rates.
In July.
No, they approve them before that. But it's once they know what the budget is.
Yes,
I think that's when they approve the rates.
and we're not, that's not something we need to be talking about.
No,
And I think the state also gets to certify.
oh, the water and sewer rates?
So.
Yeah, yeah,
That
so.
way towns don't say, you know, last year we charged you $14 per cubic yard, and this year we're gonna go to $200.
And generally the town, I mean, the town has close to 2 million in reserves in the,
Yeah, I was really
Enterprise
asking about
funds.
our role.
Yeah,
I would say,
yeah.
do we need to be talking about that? And the answer is no.
No.
For various reasons
And-
that you pointed out.
yeah, and I did receive from Andrea today, 10-year history on revenues for all the accounts. So I'm gonna kind of take a look at it, and what I'm kind of leaning towards is maybe saying 95% of a
Mhm.
2-year average or a 3-year average instead of just the
Do
prior
you know what we're
year.
talking about?
No,
Okay,
I don't
can you
know
just
what-
take a second on this.
what is the mystery or magic of enterprise?
Oh, so the enterprise funds for water and sewer is they collect the water and sewer rates and put them into an enterprise fund separate from the general fund.
Okay. And it
And
has to
so
cover
then-
itself.
Yeah, and then the people who work there are paid by the town,
Okay,
and their benefits are paid by the town. So in the enterprise budgets, we carry those salaries and those benefits, and then a transfer is done from the enterprise fund to the general fund at the end of the year
reimburse the
to-
town.
to-
That's
to
correct.
reimburse the town for all of those expenses.
Okay.
And
And
the,
that includes insurance and all that.
yeah,
What's, why do enterprise at all?
and,
So I think, as I understand it, part of it is you can absorb gains and handle them differently than the rest of the whole municipality, which may run at a loss.
I see, okay,
The income is to some degree discretionary because people can choose to use less water
I
or
see.
not.
yeah,
Sewer is automatically a function of how much water
Water
you use.
use, right.
You know, Youngblood got
yeah, yeah,
challenge with this,
Yeah.
we use more water than sewer years ago. But it's more of an accounting thing.
so we can carry a surplus in the enterprise fund
yes,
that doesn't require really town appropriation, whereas if we have a surplus in the municipal government,
Yeah.
it has to go into free cash at the end of the
I
year.
see, okay.
And then we have to,
So we can build up a reserve in the enterprise fund.
Right,
Yeah.
so that-
Separate from the town reserve.
right, so that if they miscalculate the fees, they have a pot to pull expenses from.
Yeah.
In the enterprise fund, and when I looked a couple of years ago, when I looked at all of the reserves, the enterprise funds had like between 2 and 3 million. They've used some of them. Yeah,
And
so,
that was part of her answer to me a moment ago when I asked about whether because they have the flexibility of having reserves.
so that it's, spending the money is much more flexible than it, when we do our budgets, the numbers whatever the town meeting approves for the groupings of expenses, can't expend outside that. We can't spend more than that. We can only move things around in the underlying
Uh-huh.
line item. So, and that's why we have a finance committee reserve fund. Is if somebody's gonna spend more than was appropriated, they can come to the finance committee.
The classic one is overtime. The classic one is overtime.
Public safety,
Oh,
That's the place we have to, that's why Dean asked the question he did, because overtime. Well, I think it's almost uncontrollable as far as I can figure out.
well,
they always lowball.
no, it's
Okay,
not
well.
like Chief Fitzgerald had actually calculated it.
He worked it out.
Yeah.
This year it looks very good, yeah, in fact.
It's improved, let me, it's correct, I don't
So
want
then,
One more
So-
little tidbit on enterprise funds. So when you look at the capital budget and what goes before the town, it will talk about funding sources. And a lot of times it may say general fund, and then it'll probably say enterprise fund.
Okay,
So a certain amount of certain amount of pipes for sewer and pipes for water get tied into the enterprise fund. So
Okay.
it's like its own little entity over here contributing to the.
so it's being paid like from fees rather than the
From
general tax
taxation.
rate, yeah.
Okay.
And so then the other thing we're talking about is the revenues. Because we're trying to establish a formula to be used every year. For Andrea to project the revenues, because we've had issues where in the past. we felt that the revenues were being under projected, which was leaving excess money in the budget to be spent and more money going into free cash at the end of the year. So the tax rate was higher than it needed.
And people didn't want that. So, because the taxes were too high.
We're trying to be efficient, but I think part of it, so for example, like receipts, a large part of receipts are excise taxes on vehicles. You know, the town is not scrapping its entire personal vehicle fleet every year. It's fairly predictable.
Right.
Certain number of people buy new cars and certain people don't. But we were finding that the receipts were sort of estimating like, well, you know, we're not gonna see many new vehicles, so the receipt number was way down, and then at the next year, it was suddenly like, we had a lot of revenue coming in from receipts. And then the opposite happens on the expense end. You know, it's like, well, we think we're gonna have to replace this, and then at the end of the year, it's like, well, actually, we got by with everything, so we don't need to spend it. So between those two budgeting errors, we end up with a lot of, in a commercial enterprise, you call it net income. Yeah, for tax people, you call it basically reserves.
And we
which
were
is
about
taking-
16% of our operating budget, which we decided was too high.
Because we don't pay dividends.
Correct.
And we've already taxed people for that money.
But,
Yeah, that's the real.
and our job is to be responsible.
Yeah.
We adopted a mission or a statement a couple of years ago saying that we want the tax rate to reflect current expenses and not have a whole bunch of reserve funds accumulating money that's gonna be spent later, which is what Essex does. They have all sorts of, we do have the fire vehicle replacement fund.
Sort of like a depreciation fund.
Yeah, and he gave us a very good,
Excellent.
Forecast of his.
Yeah.
Of his replacements and his.
exactly how long each apparatus, because we ran into a problem that we were having issues with fire chiefs and therefore we were reluctant to replace equipment. And some of the equipment went too long.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to be realistic.
And when I looked at this DPW schedule, I tried to put out each year, you know, how many years they each last, and that's what led to my comment to you. You can actually program it out, it runs about 2.25, 2.5 is the run rate on the $2 million worth of rolling stock sitting in the parking lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a little closer look at it to
It's
see
$2
how
million.
long this stuff is
Just like it
lasting.
went $2 million worth of trucks, there are 10 350s. There are 2 450s, one 150. I mean, you could just, you know.
Yeah, I think part of it is, you know, one question is that the appropriate amount of money to be thinking about budgeting each year to maintain the asset? Well, the second question is, do we have too much of an asset there?
Right.
Both questions, yes.
And
mean,
I
that was
feel
what
I got a good answer to
Kathy
that.
was trying to ask.
Yeah, 5,000 people.
I have no idea whether $2 million makes any sense, but I was awed by the number, that's
Right.
all.
I mean, those trucks.
Oh, they're expensive. Yeah.
I mean, there's no question that they're in those trucks.
But I think at kind of a higher level, when it comes to tangible assets like that, we do get pretty good about saying, here's our replacement costs, here's how much we have to be putting away each year. So the fire, police, DPW, little squishy. I mean, the harbor, so a guy who lives out near the yacht club and I spent years looking at the dredging model. And we ultimately came up with a number to maintain that asset out there. We should be on the dredging level, putting $275,000 a year stock, assuming a 15-year dredging cycle for the whole harbor. And that just kind of floats over here into boats and it floats over there. And so, you know, the stuff needs to get brought down to ground.
Well,
in my
especially if you
humble
look at-
opinion.
Especially if you look at $400,000 motorboats.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think we need to.
holy moly.
Okay,
need to
we'll
revisit.
talk about
We
the
need to
boats another night.
Okay, well, I won't. I just,
I was listening a little bit less.
Awesome.
yes, awesome.
I think we get some understanding.
I think we have a lot of work yet to do on capital.
I agree. I am actually So in years past, we've got
We have,
pretty big detailed things.
we have a spreadsheet
I know.
on the
But,
capital.
but this
I know.
capital presentation
I
for
know.
the town is, I would say.
But she gave us a spreadsheet that went out, no, he did,
Yeah,
the 5 years or something.
yeah, I
Yes,
was
yes.
looking at it a moment ago.
I sent it to you. Yeah, thank you. I sent,
Oh, good,
I
okay.
sent it to tonight.
Okay,
Yeah, so we've got that, but I think that presentation's not worth much.
oh, I'm,
The one you just pointed to.
I'm not happy with this at all because there's not everything's in it.
Right.
And the numbers didn't add up. I'm gonna go back and look at DPW and see
Where's
What the-
sanitation?
what the summary is versus the little sheets we have. Because it's not working. And she has a spreadsheet, which I'm gonna ask her for.
Andy, are you still on? I had would he have the link to the ClearGov where you can get that updated real-time budget as opposed to? Don't we, can't,
You know, we talked about this at the beginning of the year.
right,
And again, this is. things that
ClearGov
you're
is not
coming out
available
saying,
yet, is what I
Oh,
understand.
Well, and it also needs to be read, it needs to have a revision number.
right,
Because we look at a 5-year capital plan, I'm pushing multi-year out. And then the next year, it's all different. It's different. We need a rev number on these things so we can follow it year to year.
well, that's what, I was just wondering whether it's not
That's
on.
something we can get from Andrew? Is that something we can all trust? I mean, I know you're going back to her on various things, but.
I'm gonna ask her for her spreadsheet,
Okay, okay.
her Excel spreadsheet,
Yeah, I understand where the, yeah, that,
which is what she gave me last year. And it had all the numbers in it,
well, this,
and she updates it.
Yeah.
Um,
this year is all about capital. I mean, the operating is
and
not much.
I'm just struggling with these pages.
Well, I think they need more information. You know, in years past, we've had, fire department has had 3 pages of
Well,
what
and
they've done, what they've
That's
accomplished,
what-
what their ambitions
that's
are
what-
going
Their
forward.
staff, their structure.
yeah,
Yeah.
we asked to have it simpler, but I think that what I had wanted was all of that stuff in one package. And then the
And then the back,
financial
yeah.
stuff in a separate package, so it could be changed as we went along. But, I mean, Todd sent me, and I haven't forwarded it to you yet, Todd sent me what he had in
I see.
his little write-up. Which he thought we had,
That would be helpful.
yeah, it's 8 pages, I think. Okay,
Okay,
do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second, Lori seconds. All in favor? Aye. Yes, this meeting went too long.
Glad to hear that.
We've been getting out at 9 or 9:30, but,
DPW is a very fine.
Chuck's not in science.
About what I sent you.
uh,
The 42-year one. That